On Christmas Day, as I took my seat at the festive table, my son looked me in the eye and said, "You're not invited, freeloader." His wife sat beside him, nodding in quiet agreement. The irony? They were living under my roof. I didn't raise my voice. I simply said, "You have until morning to leave." By sunrise, the police were at the door. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. If I fail today, I'll lose my home, the custom-designed space I poured 10 years of my life into, and the last sliver of self-respect that still answers to the boy who believed his father's approval was worth chasing. Snow was coming down in the meticulous, infuriating way it does when the world wants to hush you just when your fury demands volume. I hung my own coat, a tailored graphite wool, on the same vintage brass hook my architect's eye installed 20 years ago, brushed melt from the shoulders with a sharp, decisive gesture, and stepped into my living room to find my father, Silas, spread across my expensive Italian leather recliner like a colossal, entitled house cat that pays the mortgage. A mortgage I have been servicing alone for 13 years, despite his claims. His phone lit his face blue, a sickly, digital glow. The minimalist Danish Christmas tree I picked out lit it gold, an ironic, festive sheen. Neither light made him look older, but neither made him look wise, only stubborn. "Finally showed," he said without looking up, his voice the same grating texture it's held for 20 years. "Lose track in your book stacks again. 8 months. 8 months of the usurper in that chair. 8 months of my life on hold. 8 months of his wife in my kitchen, her things blooming in every room like a suffocating ivy. The smell of her floral cosmetics permanently coating my sink. The ugly, donated coats breeding on the banister. The sensible, square-toed shoes multiplying by the front door like an unwelcome, infuriating fungus. I just came from my mandatory volunteer shift at the public library annex where I keep the holiday returns from killing the circulation desk. A volunteer position he secured for me, an attempt to publicly humble the idle son. I had hurried through the cold, seething, to be home for Christmas Eve, only to find the air already thick with his judgment. "How are preparations?" I asked, adjusting my cashmere sweater, fighting to keep the rage from spiking my tone. My voice does this thing now, quieter than it used to be, yet somehow heavier, the years of suppressed resentment putting gravel in it. "We're good," he said, dismissing me with a wave of his hand. "We don't need help." My wife, Veronica, moved in the kitchen doorway, her back to me, a hand-embroidered towel over one shoulder, her ponytail tight with silent frustration. "Everything's under control," she added, the phrase cutting the air like a razor. Under control is a phrase people use when they're afraid to say who's really in control. And we both knew it wasn't me, not while he held the deed. I straightened a silver bell on the tree, meticulously adjusting the wooden angel my late mother painted so it wasn't listing, a silent act of defiance. I still talk to that angel some nights, not out loud, not usually, but I use it as a silent witness against him. The O'Malleys are bringing potato salad," my father said, finally glancing up, his eyes cold and assessing. "Dave's coming. Maybe Clara from across the street. Just a few people. Just a few people. In my house, on my antique dishes, drinking my ridiculously expensive wine. I felt the smallest clench in my jaw, a spasm of pure tuberculosis that had been growing for months. It was the way a man's body tells him a boundary has been crossed, obliterated, and then mocked long enough. "When did we decide that?" I asked, the words forced through my teeth. "Last week," he said, casually. Veronica sent the texts. You were at the library. Of course, I was. They knew my hours. Planning around me is easier than planning with me, a lesson I learned with a bruising finality over 4 decades. I counted the place settings when I saw the dining room, my meticulously designed sanctuary now a scene of violation. 8 settings. The good baccarat china, hauled out of the attic and scrubbed clean without asking. A new, sickeningly festive tablecloth I didn't recognize. The centerpiece looked like a magazine was coming to shoot a holiday spread. Pine boughs, red berries, thick silk ribbon. Ribbon always says money to me. Money he insisted on controlling. Maybe that's an old man's thought, but I've earned my old man's thoughts, even if I'm only 45. The refrigerator told more damning truths. Premium organic turkey, an absurd shrimp ring, cheeses in plastic like museum pieces, 2 bottles of Bordeaux more expensive than my first apartment's monthly rent. I do the bills myself. The numbers bite the way winter air bites. It wakes you up to the reality of who is paying and who is merely usurping. I poured myself a black coffee, a bitter, deliberate dose of reality, and retreated to my reading chair. Except my reading chair, the last bastion of my personal space, had been slid against the wall to make room for 4 folding chairs, the kind of cheap, utilitarian furniture I despise. My chair, my anchor, cornered. The present likes its little symbols of domination. The doorbell rang at 6. 00 sharp. Guests arrived with their covered dishes and high, performative holiday voices, their bulky, snow-dusted boots tracking clean, pristine snow into my entry with grateful thank yous for invitations I hadn't extended. I took their coats and pretended hospitality, because habits are bone deep, and I was raised by him to hang a stranger's coat before I hang them out to dry. A small, subtle dig that always kept me in my place. Beautiful home, Mrs. O'Malley said, her hand reaching out to touch the frame of a photograph where my hair is black and my mother is alive, her face a mask of patronizing sympathy. It took a monumental effort not to flinch. It's treated me well, I said, my voice carefully neutral. Dave! My father boomed, descending the stairs in a cardigan I watched my pension fund pay for. Welcome, man! Oh, great place, Dave said to him, his eyes scanning a life that wasn't his, a life that was mine. Must be nice having all this space. It has its costs, my father replied. That single line, tossed out like an actor giving a practiced, dramatic eye to a room he thinks is full of uniformed extras. Connor? Clara peered around him at me, a plate of homemade shortbread cookies in her hands. I hear these are your favorite. I thanked her, the simple, reflexive politeness kicking in, because my mother taught me to thank a person handing you sweetness, even if that sweetness felt poisoned. Then I watched the small, silent recognition pass over faces as they looked from the photographs of my mother and me, to my father, and tried to do the subtle, impossible math of who belongs where. People don't always say what they know, but they can still feel the wrongness of the gravitational pull. Candlelight and chatter filled the dining room when we finally moved to the table, the air suffocating with forced cheer. I reached for my usual chair, the head of the table where I've carved turkeys, shared birthdays, and once, years ago, fell asleep with my firstborn son on my chest, and my father stepped in front of me. Stop, he said, his voice quiet, devoid of the theatrical booming, a sound far more dangerous. The room went quiet so fast the candles sounded loud, hissing like miniature snakes. You're not invited to this dinner, Freeloader. I've been hit before. A fall off a ladder in '98, a wrench slipping and bruising a palm bone so deep it sang for a week. A sentence can bruise the same way. The impact a cold, sharp shock. His word landed on my sternum, driving the breath from me. "What did you say?" I asked, keeping my voice level, fighting the hot, blinding rush of anger, because men my age know that volume is a lever he controls, not a solution. "You heard me," he said, and he said it like he had an audience, which he did. We invited real guests. Denise O'Malley's hand touched her wine glass and froze there like it was a bird she didn't want to startle. Dave's beer hung motionless in space. Clara's mouth was a small, silent O of winter shock. My wife, Veronica, stood in the kitchen arch with a dish towel and didn't say a thing. Not a word. Sometimes silence is a signature, a final stamp of betrayal. "Silas," Paul O'Malley said gently, trying to introduce reason into the insane moment. "He's your son." "A son who doesn't deserve respect," my father shot back, his righteous anger the culmination of 8 months of simmering rage over a reversed power dynamic. He gestured around us, his hand sweeping across my possessions. All day he sits around, does nothing, acts like he owns the place. I looked at the candles in my late mother's heavy silver holders and let my ribs remember what grief feels like when it puts on a costume and calls itself anger. I let the quiet work, a weapon far more potent than his shouting. You can spend quiet like money if you've saved enough of it. "Whose name is on the deed?" Denise O'Malley asked after a long minute, her voice tidy and legalistic. "She's a person who loves labels and ownership." "That's not important," my father snapped, trying to dismiss the ultimate fact. "It's not complicated," Paul O'Malley said, his tone firmer. He stood, forcing his height into the room, because his presence makes the air around him sharper, more immediate. People listen to height in a way I never learned to forgive. My father's volume went up, and his control went down. He controls everything. Every penny, every decision. "You're wearing new sneakers," I said, my eyes still fixed on the mesmerizing, indifferent flame of the candles. 200 plus. The watch is more. Those groceries weren't cheap. Should I bring the receipts? "Stop," he barked, his face red. He was pacing now, the way a man does when he understands he's not winning the argument and doesn't remember how to lose with grace. "So grown adults should pay their own way," Denise said, supporting him, her voice holding the maternal ache of disappointment. I know that ache. "Enough!" my father shrieked, no longer the composed elder, but a desperate, cornered animal. His fists hit the table and made the forks jump and clatter. The magnificent turkey trembled. "Go upstairs now." The command landed in the room and skidded across it like a plate on ice. Everyone watched me. Everyone. The candles hissed. Snow tapped the glass. I waited until the echo of his voice finally left the molding, until the absolute silence had fully settled, and then I delivered the cold, hard, definitive sentence. "You have until morning to move out." You could feel the gravity of the room shift. The space tilted a full degree. People breathed again, a ragged, collective gasp. "It's Christmas," he stammered, his defiance turning instantly to pleading. "You can't. This is my house." "I said morning," I replied. I didn't add the rest, the final, bitter forgiveness I was granting him. That kindness isn't weakness, and patience isn't permission. When you're older, you learn how little explaining matters. I went upstairs and sat in my window chair, the master of my own domain, and watched headlights back down my driveway one by one as my guests, his guests, chose their dignity over dessert, choosing the truth I had just spoken over the lie he had been living. Downstairs, muted. Furious voices rose and fell. Plates knocked a little too hard. A sob, Veronica's, I assumed, started and stopped, immediately stifled. I rested my hands on my knees and let the quiet climb the steps and sit beside me, a loyal companion. The neighborhood carried on with its synthetic Christmas cheer. The inflatable snowman across the street bobbed in a wind that wasn't really there. You either laugh or you decide to sleep. Morning is the ultimate test. Mine arrived with an absolute, unnatural silence. No running water, no footsteps, no whistling. 10. 0 glowed on the clock beside my bed like a brazen dare. I dressed the way authority dresses in a house. Pressed slacks, a crisp collared shirt, the weighty leather belt my wife gave me on our 10th anniversary. If you don't feel like the owner, the house won't believe you. I made coffee, strong and black, sat where I could watch the hall to the guest room, and let the smell do what smells do. Pull memories, steady hands, prepare for confrontation. At 11, 0 on the dot, the floor creaked. My father, Silas, padded into the kitchen in ridiculous silk pajama pants, the ultimate symbol of his entitlement, and poured coffee into the mug my mother painted in a ceramics class. World's best husband looped in her neat hand, so small violations tell the whole story if you line them up properly. Last night got heated, he said, leaning against the counter like a man in a car commercial, attempting a casual demeanor that failed utterly. Holidays, right? Emotions. We should move on. Fine with moving on, I said, my voice granite hard. Move out first. He laughed, a short, practiced sound. Be serious. I am. He shifted one foot to the other, as if his physical balance had suddenly become complicated. It's the day after Christmas. Where do you expect us to go? Nothing's open. No apartments to find. Be reasonable. You've had 8 months, I said. Reasonable had its chance. What are you going to do if we don't? His smile was a cheap challenge from a boy who still believes bluffing is a winning strategy. I reached for the old wall phone, a relic I keep out of habit. The handset warmed my palm the way familiar things do. You'll see. Stop, he said, and this time it was quiet, truly afraid. Think about this. I've been thinking for 8 months, I said, the vindication sweet and cold on my tongue. Now I'm deciding. The city PD cruiser turned the corner 23 minutes after I hung up. 2 officers. One young, his hair like a field on its first buzz cut, eager and nervous. One older, the look of a man who's folded a lot of holiday disputes into paperwork. The older one did the talking. They always send one who knows how to talk to a father without completely dressing him down. Sir, we received a call about a property dispute, he said on my porch. Yes, officer, I said. I need assistance removing unauthorized occupants from my home. I had a folder, because I'm still an engineer at heart, even if I'm an architect by trade, and proof is my language. Deed, utility bills, tax statements. A man should be able to produce proof when he says the word mine. Are you the sole owner? The older one asked. Yes, I said. Mortgage paid off 12 years ago. They were temporary guests. That arrangement ended last night. My father stepped into the hall in those ridiculous silk pajama pants, disbelief whitening his face. Officer, this is crazy. This is my son. We had a family argument. He didn't call me dad this time. Interesting what fear instantly rearranges. The owner has requested you leave, the older officer said, his voice like sanded wood, smooth, but you still felt the necessary grit beneath. There's no lease on file, no tenancy established. Please gather essential belongings. How long do we have? Veronica asked from the stairs. Her robe pulled tight like dignity can be knotted and secured. Do we have? I'd recommend now, the officer said. You learn how fast a lifetime can pack. Boxes appeared like conjuring tricks from the guest room. Sweaters I never saw her wear. Shoes my father hadn't worn enough to scuff. Chargers for devices I didn't even know we owned. The young officer stood where he could see both the front door and the stairs, a silent, disciplined sentinel. The older one, Officer Davies, kept his notepad handy, not writing much, the way men do when they know their presence is the entire point. Neighbors appeared and pretended they didn't. Curiosity is an enshrined human right on a quiet street. Clara Pike walked her small, nervous dog past my drive twice, the animal sniffing the strange air. A contractor's truck slowed, its driver openly staring at the squad car, and then remembered an errand elsewhere with a screech of tires. People rarely judge the way you think. They judge the way a cruiser looks in your driveway. This isn't over, my father, Silas, said, loading the last, pitiful box of toiletries and silk pajamas into the trunk of a battered sedan Veronica had called to pick them up. There's a way a man says that when he's run out of better sentences, when his fury has nothing left to fuel it but cheap threats. Have a safe trip, I said, leaning against the doorframe, my voice devoid of triumph but thick with finality. I meant it. You can want someone off your porch and still want no harm to find them on the road. Those truths, I've learned, live fine together if you let them. My forgiveness was not for his return, but for his safe exit. The officers gave me a card and a practiced speech about next steps if harassment followed, and then they left, the cruiser's engine a low, relieved sound. The house grew wider in the sudden silence, expanding like a held breath finally exhaled. On the coffee table, a watch he'd forgotten gleamed, heavy, expensive, a little cruel in its silent accusation. I weighed it in my palm the way you weigh a hard choice and then set it on the porch rail. If he wanted it, he could come back for it, with a knock and a sentence that started with, "I'm sorry." Maybe I'd be here. Maybe I'd be in my architecture studio, hand-sanding a model, remembering that wood forgives the way we do. Slowly, with intention, layer by careful layer. I walked through the rooms of my house like you walk through a museum where you are the only, bewildered guest. I saw the water rings his iced drinks left on the coffee table I refinished last spring, indelible scars of his presence. I saw the baccarat china on the dining table, plates fixed with the faint gravy ghosts of a ruined holiday meal, and I felt my wife's absence, Veronica's silent, hurt withdrawal, like a hand not on my shoulder. I stacked the plates, ran the water, and watched the steam rise while the winter sun turned my kitchen into a place I recognized. At the sink, I added up 8 months. Utilities up by a third, groceries doubled, my patience exhausted. I let the cold, hard math show me what misplaced filial love sometimes obscures. Cost. I rinsed a crystal glass, a delicate piece, and held it to the window. Cold sunlight poured through it and broke into a spill of spectral colors on the counter. Memory is like that at my age. Some things blur, but not the important ones. I dried my hands and checked the thermostat on my way to the hallway, already correcting the foolishly high setting he'd insisted on. I touched the banister my mother used to polish on Saturdays and thought in my familiar, engineer-like lists. Clean the table, return the china to the attic, take the bags to the curb on Tuesday, make lasagna for one that lasts 3 days, call the library to see if they need help with the New Year's rush, change the dead bulb in the porch light, write down what I told him and when because paper keeps better than memory. I wrote one more line in my head and underlined it twice. The house is mine because I'm the one grateful enough to keep it. Outside, the snow had stopped, and a crisp quiet settled over the neighborhood. In that silence, I could hear the fridge hum, the heater tick, the clock above the doorway speak its small seconds. The house and I listened to each other the way two old friends do after a terrible argument. Careful, relieved, and committed to trying again in the morning. I poured the last of the fancy, expensive coffee he bought into my mug, and stood at the window with it, warmed by something that wasn't only the cup. You can call it peace. You can also call it the simple consequence of choosing to act. If I blink now, the line I drew turns back into a suggestion, and I won't allow that. I wake before the sun and lie there listening to the house test its joints. Heat ticks through the vents, reassuring. The fridge hums like a sleeping animal. The wind rubs a branch against the gutter with a sound that used to bother me, and now sounds like proof I live in a place with trees. No voices below. No phone charging on my kitchen counter that isn't mine. The silence is almost theatrical, like the stagehands cleared the set and left one light burning over the center of the room. I put on coffee and find the notepad I keep by the stove. I write a list because lists are how I convince my architect's brain I know what I'm doing. Put away china. Wash tablecloth. Sweep and mop. Check thermostat and filters. Bills. Heat. Electric. Taxes. Call the library about the postal shift. Porch light bulb. Watch on rail? The question mark is for the watch I left outside. I don't bring it in. Boundaries have props, too. The dining room is a battlefield after a war that no one admits happened. I stack plates and run water scalding hot until the steam fogs my glasses. Gravy ghosts rinse away. I move with the deliberate slowness of a man returning a thing to itself. There's a calming rhythm to washing and drying when you're alone. Water, rag, towel, shelf, repeat. That calms parts of me I don't have names for. My mother's angel is still on the tree. I set her straight, then take a deep breath and reach for the crates in the hall closet. I always take the tree down the last week of the year. I keep the habit. You keep habits that remind the house what kind of man you are. By 8:30, the tree is gone. The needles are swept. The living room returns to its ordinary self. A rug with a sun-faded rectangle where the first console TV sat. Bookcases that lean in like listeners. My chair back where my chair belongs. I leave there 2 stockings folded on the entry table. I don't throw them out. Some things I've learned to send to the porch of the future and let the future decide. I strip the tablecloth and find the ring where a wine glass sweated through. I turn it over and laugh at myself. The mark is on the cloth, not the wood. I put it in the machine and watch the drum make small, violent weather with it. The house applauds in its quiet way. Upstairs, the guest room has the air of a place where people left mid-sentence. A drawer is cracked open. 2 hangers are tangled on the closet rod, the kind of dust that seems new because it belonged to other people. I find a wadded receipt behind the lamp for a pair of sneakers that cost more than my first car's clutch replacement. I put it in a drawer. Paper remembers in a way the heart often refuses to. On my way down, I pass the thermostat and hear my mother's voice, a ghost of reason, say what she always did. It can be warm without being foolish. I knock the setting down 1 degree. Compromise with a ghost. Call it thrift. I lay my bills on the kitchen table in 2 careful stacks. People talk about money like it's mysterious. It isn't, not at my level. It's counting and paying and sleeping, or counting and not paying and not sleeping. The electric and heat are up by 1/3 since spring. Groceries doubled. Little expenses add little teeth. The numbers tell me where my softness cost me. I take a pen and look at my checking balance, then my savings, then the folder where I keep the receipts I used to justify the call to the officers. I don't feel proud about that call. Pride is for parades. But I don't feel sorry either. Sorry is what I felt for 8 months, and that sorry stole from bills that needed me to act. I write checks with that old muscle memory you can't unlearn once you've paid a mortgage off by hand. The property tax comes due next week. I line up a note for that. I circle the heat bill and write filter today because it's cheaper to help a furnace breathe than to replace a system that choked while you were telling yourself stories about patience. I eat toast and egg with the TV off, not because I'm against it, but because sound I don't choose makes me tired. I rinse my plate and set it on the rack, and only then let myself make the call. Maple Grove Public Library. The voice on the circulation desk is a young one. They change every couple of years, but the library is the kind of institution that always sounds the same. Reliable, quiet, busy. Connor, I say, using my proper name. If you're short on volunteers this week, I can take the afternoon. Connor, we are drowning in returns. If you can be here at 1, Zur, you'll be a legend. I'm too old to be a legend, I say. A pair of hands will have to do. I hang up and feel better right away. Work is a tonic. I don't mean jobs. I mean work. Things worth doing that have beginnings, middles, and ends. Out on the porch, the watch shines where I left it. A small moon on the rail. Snow from last night has melted to a thin skin of ice on the steps. I scrape it and salt and test my balance like a man training for a sport called not falling. Across the street, Clara Pike's curtains stir. 10 seconds later, her front door opens and she steps out with a casserole in both hands, oven mitts bright as summer fruit. "Don't drop that," I call out, nodding toward the icy sidewalk. "The sidewalk wants to make a point. Then it will have to make it to someone else," she says, picking her way over carefully. "Chicken and rice, anti-drama food." She hands me the dish. "I'll take it. Can I come in for 5? "You can come in for 10, I say, and hold the door. She takes in the room with those quick eyes of hers that miss nothing and pretend to miss everything. "You work fast. If I stop moving, I start thinking," I say. She peels off her mitts. And then I start giving myself closing arguments for a case with no jury. She looks at the watch on the rail. "You keeping that outside to freeze sense into it?" "Something like that," I reply. We stand in the kitchen. I put the casserole on the stove and pour coffee. She warms her hands around the mug and doesn't drink. There's a kindness in that. Warming up before you offer heat to someone else. "I heard the cars," she says finally. "The cruiser. I'm sorry, Connor." "You don't have to be," I say. It was coming. "Christmas Eve," she says, and lets the words sit between us like a wet newspaper. "Dates don't sanctify behavior," I counter, my tone firm. "They just make it easier to justify bad timing." She half smiles. "You know he came by this morning?" she asks. "Silas?" She nods. "How early?" 8, she says. Rang the bell like a salesman. Asked if I'd seen his watch. I looked toward the porch without meaning to. I put it where he could find it. "He asked if he could wait on my couch until you left for the library," Clara says, watching me over the rim of the cup now. "Said he just needed 5 minutes inside to get a coat. He forgot." "He has a coat," I say, the lie scraping its way out of the memory. "I packed it into his arms myself yesterday with the rest of the boxes. He's trying the back door through the side yard. I told him my couch was for people who knock at decent hours. she says, her gaze steady, confirming her loyalty. And that I wasn't walking him across the street to sneak him past his own son. She lifts the casserole. I am, however, walking chicken and rice across the street, because a man has to eat after a battle. I let out a breath I didn't realize I clenched. Thank you. Don't start with the pride, she says. I made two. If you hadn't needed it, Clara, I would have eaten both and regretted the sheer caloric arrogance of it, I said, a genuine smile finally cutting through the tension in my face. Yes, if Silas comes back, tell him the watch is on the rail. If he wants it, he can take it. If he wants to talk, he can knock. If he wants to live here again, he can forget it. Those 3 sentences cut cleaner than you think. Connor, she observed, her eyes serious. They have to, I replied. I don't have the energy for jagged edges anymore. She set the empty coffee cup down, her motion sharp and decisive. You going to the library? Shot to 1. Show 0 on the dot, I confirmed. She gestured at the list on the table, which I realized now resembled a series of self-issued mandates. And the bills already lectured me, I added dryly. I took notes. Her eyes softened, and I felt that familiar, complex mix of hating and loving her empathy. I'm on your side, Connor, but I'm going to say the sentence anyway. Say it. It was Christmas. I know, I said. That's why he did it then. Because he thought I wouldn't do anything about it. That's the trick with holidays. People think the date is what makes something right, instead of simply being a convenient date to justify their worst behavior. She nodded, a gesture that signaled she understood more than anyone needed to say out loud. I brought a second thing, she said, fishing in her coat pocket. It was a crisp envelope, my name written on it in her neat, unhurried hand. What's this? A piece from a philosophy blog I follow, she said, correcting my assumption of religion. It's about boundaries and kindness and how they can still live in the same structure. The author is an architect, actually. Said a good boundary is simply a well-maintained wall. I don't read blogs, I said, picking up the piece with a skeptical frown. It's still good writing, she insisted. And there's a recipe for a killer lentil soup on the back. She squeezed my arm once, a firm, non-negotiable pressure, and left me with the chicken and rice, the envelope, and the knowledge that my neighbor would not let me go feral in a house 2 doors from hers. After she was gone, I systematically changed the furnace filter and took the accumulated trash bags out to the bin. On my way back, I checked the rail. The watch was gone. In its place was a folded napkin, the cheap, patterned kind Veronica buys in packs with designs that look like wallpaper I wouldn't put in a utility closet. The napkin read, "We will freeze to death in our car. Please, just one more night." I flipped it over like a man checking the other side of a coin for honesty. Nothing there, just the flimsy paper backing. I looked across the street. Clara's curtain fell back into place, a definitive, quiet close. I took the napkin inside and put it on the table next to my stack of bills. I stared at it long enough to feel the cold, needy part of me that wanted to reach for my keys, wanted to solve the crisis instantly. 1 night turns into 2 turns into 8 months. I said it out loud like a catechism, a cold, hard truth to ward off the guilt. 1 night turns into 2. 2 turns into 8 months. The house listened, patient and absolute. At noon, I made a sandwich and stood at the sink, eating mechanically. I pictured Silas and Veronica in a car with frost patterns creeping up the glass and reminded myself of what I knew, the evidence I had just cataloged. They have friends. They have people. They have a credit card I saw used for expensive dinners I didn't attend. They have options. I had one. I wrote a reply on the back of the napkin in the clear. Capital letters I reserve for blueprints and ultimatums. There's a motel on the highway. I will pay for one night if you meet me on the porch at 5:00 p.m., sober and alone, to accept the cash and to agree. This is the only help I give for lodging. No bags, no entry, no talk after 5 minutes. Connor. I didn't know if Connor was the right signature. Titles don't always reflect the job you've done. Sometimes they announce the job you're finally doing. I taped the napkin securely to the inside of the storm door and went to the library. The library smelled the way it always does this week. Wet wool, paper that took a breath of winter, a harsh tang from the cleaner they use that makes the dark wood tables shine for just long enough to reflect your face back. Holiday returns are like spooked horses, I told the young girl at the desk. Get them corralled quick, or you find them in history when they belong in biography. She laughed, a nervous, youthful sound. Show me where to put the stamp pad so it calms down. I settled into the familiar, comforting rhythm of the work. My hands remembered the shelf heights and the unexpected weight of the big atlases. They knew what to do with the book whose spine had finally given up the fight. A man brought me a stack of children's books and apologized for the crayon marks. My daughter loves to make the princesses talk, he said. They had a lot to say this week. That's a good problem, I said, and I meant it. At 3:00, I saw Paul O'Malley in the doorway, looking like a man who'd wandered the wrong way into a different, quieter aisle of his life. He raised a hand. I raised mine back. He waited until I finished shelving a row of architectural histories, and then stood by the cart, his thumbs shoved deep in his coat pockets like they were hiding. Denise told me not to come, he said. And here I am anyway. We're both sorry about what happened. Dave looked like he wanted to climb under the table. He wanted to climb under the table, Paul corrected, a slight, grim smile touching his lips. We left with half a potato salad and a whole case of second-hand embarrassment. I'm the original owner, I said. It's part of the package. He sighed, a heavy, tired sound. They stopped by our place last night, he said. Asked if they could crash. Denise said no. I said no. I felt like a man saying no to people with thin coats. You did the kind thing, I said, though it felt like a hollow assurance. Doesn't feel like it, he admitted. Kindness that holds is different than kindness that caves. You'll sleep better next week, because you did what you did this week. He shifted his weight, looking uncomfortable in the fluorescent light. They said they were headed to Clara's this morning. Clara brought me chicken, I said. She brings everyone chicken, Paul said. Her love language is a casserole with a salt content the cardiologist would frown at. We both smiled, a moment of shared, dark humor. The library light turned the dust motes between us into small, powdery sunlight. They left a note on my porch, I said. I replied. Want my 2 cents? I already deposited them, I said. But you can read the receipt. He nodded at that, understanding the metaphor instantly. For what it's worth, we're on your side, he said. I don't know if that helps. It does, I said. It makes me feel less like the villain in a story. You're not the villain, he said. You're the son. Those roles aren't mutually exclusive, I countered. He looked down at the cart, avoiding my gaze. You still coming to Tuesday coffee at the diner? He asked, a deliberate attempt at normalcy. I make coffee at home now, I said. Cheaper. I'll buy the cup, he insisted. That's not charity. That's selfishness. You keep the conversation moving so I don't have to hear Dave talk about his fantasy football team. I'll see, I said. I like to leave little things undecided. It gives the day permission to surprise me. On the way back to my cart, the girl at the desk gave me a subtle thumbs up. We're winning, she whispered. We're shelving, I whispered back. Winning is bigger. At 4:30, I left the library so I could be home by 5:00. The sky did the steel gray thing it does in winter that makes everything look like a photograph from a different decade. My porch light was out. I made a note in my head and then, remembering my head's unreliability, transferred it to the pad on the table. At 5:00 on the dot, footsteps crunched on the walk, followed by the tentative chime of the doorbell. I opened the solid door and left the storm door closed. It doubled our reflections, making us look like a pair of men I once believed we were. Silas stood there in a jacket I've seen him pose in for photos, looking more like an actor than a man being evicted. His hands were empty, his face arranged the way people arrange faces when they're about to say things designed to make you a softer person than you meant to be. Connor, he said. He got the word out, at least. The napkin is clear, I said. I held up the cash in a pristine white envelope. One night, one motel, the big one by the highway. You pick the room and pay at the desk. You take this and you leave. You don't come back tonight. No bags, no talk. 5 minutes, that's the transaction. Hi, Connor, he said again, and the name was a tool he was sharpening in his mouth, trying to make me flinch. It's freezing. Veronica's in the car. She's shaking. She's elderly. That car has heat, I said, my voice steady, uncompromising. And you have friends, and you have this envelope, and you have the ability to make choices you didn't make for 8 months. He flinched like I had physically thrown the number 8 at him. I've been looking, he said, his face collapsing into an ugly mask of wounded pride. Jobs are hard. The economy is, The economy is what it is. I finished for him. So am I. He tried another face, younger this one, the look of the boy who wanted a second scoop of ice cream and thought he deserved it because something in his day was unfair. Can we come in for 5 minutes? He asked. Just to warm up. I'm cold. You did your yelling in my dining room, I said. This porch is the only place left for honesty. Take the envelope. He stared at it like it might bite. You're unbelievable, he said finally, his voice laced with venom. Kicking your own father out at Christmas and then making a show of doling out an envelope like I'm a panhandler. I'm not making a show, I said, looking him straight in the eyes. See, this is the most private thing I know how to do. Keep the door closed and the porch open. The battered sedan idled at the curb. I could see Veronica's slumped shape through the windshield. She didn't get out. She is many things, but brave is not one I've seen. He snatched the envelope. Our fingers touched for the briefest second, a shock of contact. There was a fever to his skin. Youth runs hotter. So does anger. We'll remember this, he hissed. I hope you do, I said. Memory is affordable. Use it. He turned. He got halfway down the steps and spun back, his face contorted by one last, desperate grab for control. You could have just given us the room, he spat out. Called the motel and put your card down like a decent human. I don't give rooms to people who call me a freeloader in my own house, I said. I give cash to people I love so I can sleep. He stood there, every muscle posed like a question he wanted me to answer for him. I didn't. He went. The car pulled away, The red of the taillights smeared a little in the cold. I stayed behind the storm door until they were gone. I replaced the bulb in the porch light and wrote the motel's number on the pad in case something about the transaction needed proof later. I ate Clara's chicken and rice, and it tasted like someone else's kindness, which means it tasted better than it should. I washed the fork. I went to bed early because philosophy after 10. So makes me mean. At 2, Jacques in the morning, a slow, scraping sound at the back door awakened me. A careful metal on metal, like someone learning the language of a lock. I sat up and listened. The sound stopped, then started again. I moved the way men my age move at 2. 00 a.m. Quiet, so the joints don't register complaints that will bring the whole body to a halt. I stood in the dark kitchen and watched the familiar rectangle of the back door. The scraping stopped for good. Footsteps crunched snow. I lifted the shade with 2 fingers. A shadow moved along the fence line and disappeared. I replaced the shade and breathed. I didn't call anyone. This wasn't the night for that. This was the night for reminders. I found the tin where I keep spare hardware and took out the new deadbolt I bought last summer when the old one started to stick. I never installed it because the old one started behaving the minute it knew there was a replacement in the house. Locks have pride like people. I installed it now, my breath fogging the glass where my face reflected back at me, a head hovering in the window pane over hands that knew which way to turn the screwdriver. When I was done, I tested the bolt from both sides. It took the key like a man taking responsibility. I hung the old, useless lock on a nail in the basement as a reminder that some things you change as soon as you know you should. At 7, 00, Clara dropped a text. You up? And then seconds later, because she knows I don't look at my phone much, the doorbell rang. I opened to find her with my empty casserole dish and a folded newspaper, like we live in a town that still throws those. I heard something last night, she says quietly. You okay? I'm fine, I said. I changed the lock. A new, heavy-duty deadbolt. Good, she said. And that was the end of that topic, because she read the line in my face that said I don't want an analysis before breakfast. She handed me the paper. Front page. Cold snap tonight. The kind that tests people and pipes. I'll run a drip, I said. And I'll run a prayer for the people. You did what you could, she said, her eyes searching me for cracks she could seal with words. You didn't slam the door. You wrote rules on a napkin and handed over cash. That's a pretty generous boundary. A boundary isn't generous, I countered. It's accurate. She smiled small. That too. We stood a minute like neighbors do when there's something else they could talk about, and both decide to leave it unspoken until it ripens. She squeezed my arm again. Coffee at 10? She asked. At mine, I'll make it strong enough to apologize for itself. I have bills, I said. But there'll still be bills at 11. 11 it is. After she left, I turned to the table and the envelopes I didn't finish yesterday because I went to alphabetize the town's regrets. I paid the electric and the heat. I put the property tax check under the magnet, so I have to move it to open the fridge. I opened a new notebook and wrote on the first page, House rules. Not for him, for me. 1. If someone raises their voice at your table, the meal is over. 2. If someone insults you in your house, they leave. 3. If someone asks for money, give it in ways that don't purchase your own regret. 4. If someone tries the back door at 2, 0 a.m., change the lock at 2. 5. If you doubt yourself, do the dishes. Dishes don't lie. I tore the page out and taped it inside the pantry door where I keep the sugar. I'll see it every morning. That's the idea. At 11, 0. Clara's kitchen smelled like an apology that did, in fact, make itself. We drank in the way older people drink in the morning, small sips that make the hands steady. She told me about her sister's kid who moved back home and learned to clean baseboards as rent. I told her about the deadbolt and how it clicked under my hand like a small, quiet victory. She listened like her job was to keep me from declaring war on the world. When I got back, there was an envelope on my porch under a small rock. My name again, but in Silas's hand this time, his signature barely legible. I took it inside and stood at the table to read. We took the room. Thanks for nothing else. People will hear about what you did. They already are. Don't be surprised if someone knocks who isn't friendly. You aren't the only one who knows how to make calls. I set the letter down. I'm too old to rush to fear the way I used to when a sentence had a threat folded inside it. But I'm not too old to recognize that what looks like bluster often disguises a plan. I put the letter with the receipts, the old thermostat notes, and the property tax reminder. I picked up the phone and called no one. I went to the sink and did the 2 breakfast cups and the butter knife from the toast, like the world keeps turning and expects me to keep up. After I dried my hands, I took the small magnetic notepad off the fridge and wrote, "Call City PD. Ask about non-emergency contact for trespass complaints." I don't dial it. I don't need to yet, but I want the number in ink, not in the fog of whatever my father thinks he can conjure. By late afternoon, the house had settled into a shape I recognize. I put a stew in the pot because stews are what you make when you want tomorrow's lunch solved before tonight's dishes. I closed the curtains early against the deepening gray and sat with a book and read the same paragraph 3 times until it occurred to me that I was not reading. I was letting a book hold my place while I waited to see if someone else tried to. At 6, the phone rang. I looked at the caller ID and saw a number I didn't recognize. And because part of my boundary work is refusing to be trained by dread, I answered. "Mr. Collins," a woman's voice said. "Professional? Controlled?" "Yes, this is Denise O'Malley," she said, and rushed in before I could picture her rearranging the cordless phone in her kitchen. "I'm calling because Veronica called me, which I realize is odd, but she seems to think I can talk sense into you." "She thinks a lot of things," I said, my voice flat. "She told me they're cold and hungry, and that you locked them out, and that you're telling people you're the victim." "I haven't told anyone anything," I said. "People saw what they saw." Denise was quiet long enough for me to count to 5. "She is a careful woman with words. She also told me," Denise continued, her voice measured, "that there are valuables of hers still in your house that she needs to retrieve. She asked if I would come over with her to make sure it didn't escalate. She's fearful. She has no valuables in my house," I said. "And I don't escalate. I change locks." "I told her I'm not getting in the middle," Denise said. "I'm in the middle of enough, but I wanted you to know they're attempting the sympathy door again." "I saw," I said. "The napkin, the envelope, the 2:00 a.m. attempt." "The what?" she asked. "Nothing," I replied. We both knew it wasn't nothing, but we both understood that sometimes not naming a thing keeps it in a box until you have a real reason to open it. "Denise." "Yes. Tell Paul I might take him up on that coffee." She exhaled a short, relieved laugh. "He'll be insufferable. He'll say he saved a man from his own living room." "Let him," I said. After we hung up, I sat a long time with my hands on my knees and counted my breaths like a beginner, because that's what I was at this, at choosing firmness over the soft lie. The stew smelled done. I turned off the flame and let it sit. Food makes its own decisions once it reaches temperature. So do people. At 9:00 p.m., a text buzzed. This time it was from a number I knew. Dave, the friend Paul mentioned. You okay? Silas DM'd a few folks. Lot of noise. Ignore it. People like a bonfire and will toss anything on it to see it jump. I'm okay, I texted back. It felt strange to write it. It felt true to send it. The cold snap arrived the way cold always does here. Quietly, and then all at once. I left a drip in the sink and the cabinets under the kitchen pipes cracked open like a pair of mouths airing truth. I took the house rules from the pantry, copied them onto a blank index card, and taped that to the inside of the front door where the deadbolt clicked. I went to bed with the weight of a man who did not waver today. This was new enough to feel like a kind of ache and old enough to feel like a memory arriving on time. Before I turned off the light, I wrote one more thing in the notebook. Love is not a bed. Love is the porch light left on and the deadbolt that works. I slept, not hard, not soft, enough. In the morning, I would find out just how quickly a story travels when it meets a town that needs one. For now, the house held its breath with me, and we passed the test that comes after the first. We did not open the door to check if the line was still there. We trusted that the line was there because we drew it. A lie is faster than I am. It leaves no footprints and still gets to the porch before I do. By 9:00 the next morning, my coffee was half gone. My house rules were taped inside the pantry, and the stew from last night had set into the kind of square a man can cut with a spoon. The phone rang. I picked up because dread is a habit I'm trying to let starve. Mr. Collins, this is Maribel from Maple Grove. The library? I asked, even though I recognized her voice. Young, brisk, grateful when people put books back the right way. Yes, the library, she confirmed. We had a complaint about an interaction you had with a patron last week. I'm so sorry to ask this, but could you pause your shift today? It'll just be for a few days while we sort the details. What interaction? I asked. My hand found a pen without looking. An anonymous caller said you were confrontational at the desk over fines. She stopped, then tried a softer word. Sharp. I'm sharp with labels, I said. Not people. I believe you, she said quick. We just have to log this right. Procedure. I'll call you back as soon as I can. Of course, I said. There's no point telling a policy its job. I hung up and walked to the sink because dishes don't lie. I rinsed the mug and stared at the swirl in the drain while my mind lined up suspects and then erased the line like a decent man should. The phone rang again before the mug hit the rack. City PD, a man said. Not the older officer from last week and not the young one either. A new voice, tight like a belt. Yes, I said. We received a report alleging you assaulted your father on your front porch yesterday. Shoved him down the steps while he was retrieving personal property. I looked at the steps in my mind. New salt, new bulb above them, the envelope in his hand, Veronica in the idling car. I did not, I said. Are you at home, sir? I am. We'll be by in 15. 15 minutes is enough time to do any number of foolish things. I chose to do only 2. Put on a clean shirt. Put the envelope with the motel cash receipt on the table. After that, I sat. Chairs keep men from wandering. 2 officers stepped onto my porch at the same time. The wind lifted the edge of the doormat like it wanted to see if we put anything under it. The older one from before, Officer Sullivan, gray at the temples, eyes that have taken more statements than naps, led. A second officer I hadn't met kept his hand near his notepad like it might wobble off his belt if he didn't. Morning, Mr. Collins, Sullivan said. He had the kind of voice that would rather not be used unless necessary. Officer, I said. Coffee? Tempting, he said, unmoving. But we'll keep this quick. They stayed in the doorway like a pair of rules. Officer Sullivan explained the allegation. Shove, fall, bruised elbow, raised voice, threats. He watched my face the way a carpenter watches a bubble in a level. I opened the storm door, I said. I handed my father an envelope with enough cash for a motel. I did not shove him. He left on his feet. There were no threats, unless you count the sentence where I said the napkin was clear. The napkin? The younger one asked. I pointed at the storm door. The square of tape was still there, empty now, like a picture frame waiting on a life. They left a note, I replied. I have both. Sullivan took the napkins, read, and raised an eyebrow so slightly it was mostly a thought in motion. Do you have any cameras? Doorbell? Backyard? No, I said. I have eyes and a neighbor. Clara saw him come for the watch yesterday morning. She saw him retrieve it. We're not here for the watch, the younger one said, as if watches bored him. No, Sullivan said, cutting him a look that said we are here for whatever ends the day with fewer forms. We're here because when assault is alleged, we have to look. We document. The DA ignores or doesn't. His radio chirped. He put a palm over it to muffle the dispatch and listened. Copy, he said to the air, then to me. Mind if we step inside? I mind, I said. But come in. There's an art to being a host to men who would rather not be your guests. I waved them toward the table and pointed at the envelope with the motel receipt. They took the room, I said. At least for one night. May I? Sullivan asked. And when I nodded, he photographed the napkins and the receipt with his phone like he was taking pictures of rare birds he didn't plan to show anyone. He asked me to tell the story, and I did, once, without adjectives. The younger officer interrupted twice with the kind of questions you get when a man is still learning where to put his voice. Any witnesses? He asked. Across the street, Clara Pike, I said. She'll tell you I didn't shove a man on my porch. We'll talk to her, Sullivan said. His gaze had moved from the napkins to my house rules, visible when the pantry door drifted open a hand's width. What's that? He asked. Notes to myself, I said. I didn't open the door any wider. Some things don't help a man in a room like this. Some things help him too much. He nodded once, and I watched him put me into a category I liked. Man with lists. Lists are to officers what gardens are to neighbors. You don't have to see the whole of them to know what kind of person tends to the soil. We'll take a quick statement, Sullivan said. No charges right now. If your father wants to push this, we'll call you. He tried to file last night, but the desk sergeant explained how thin the ice was. He's angry. Angry is not illegal, I said. What he does with it might be. They left with the napkin photos and the motel receipt copied into Sullivan's notebook in block letters that made the facts march. I could feel the neighborhood watching without blinds moving. Police on your steps write their own headline for anyone who needs it. I stood and checked the porch rail out of habit, empty where the watch was. A small rock sat where his letter sat yesterday, like a punctuation mark left behind when the sentence walked off. Sullivan didn't get 5 houses down before a silver sedan pulled up and stopped just beyond my driveway. Paul O'Malley climbed out, careful on the salt. He had a bag from the bakery and a look on his face that said he'd like to pretend this was purely about muffins. You okay? He asked. I'm annoyed, I said. That would have to do for now. He handed me the bag. Blueberry. They had this other kind with chunks of frosting that looked like the baker changed careers mid-recipe. from across the street. Clara opened her door as if she'd rehearsed it with Paul. She waved a folded piece of paper in the air. Saw the patrol car? You want me to write what I saw yesterday about the watch? Please, I said. Use the word retrieved instead of took. Makes it sound less like a heist. You and your words, she said, and disappeared to get her pen moving. Paul glanced at the street behind me like he expected to see his wife round the corner with a casserole and a prepared statement. Denise told me the neighborhood group's already working up its gall, he said. Veronica posted at 3:20 in the morning a paragraph about how her elderly husband is having an episode and locking them out, and how they fear for your safety and theirs. Address blurred with one swipe like that's privacy. Comments a mile long. I closed my eyes because it helps me visualize a bonfire without feeling the heat. Do me a favor, I said. Don't show me. I won't, he said. I told Denise not to send screenshots. She wants to weigh in with facts, and I told her the one thing the internet doesn't eat is its vegetables. Thanks for that, I said. He started to leave, then turned back. Connor, I'm going to say something stupid because I don't have a better word. This sucks. It does, I said. It's also better than where I was last week. He nodded and went. Clara returned and handed me a half sheet of paper with her square letters marching in a line. On December 27th, at approximately 8:10 a.m., I observed Silas Collins walk directly onto Connor Collins's porch, pick up a wristwatch that had been sitting on the railing since the previous afternoon, and leave in haste. He did not knock. He did not speak to Connor Collins. The time on the paper was not exact. She is precise, but not precious. You're a good neighbor, I said. I like boring streets, she said. Whatever keeps ours boring, I'll do. I tucked her statement next to the motel receipt. Boring is the goal I didn't know I missed until this week. At noon, Sullivan's number lit my phone again. Mr. Collins, we spoke to your neighbor, he said, and something lighter moved in his voice. Thanks for the napkins. Thanks for the receipt. Thanks for not being the kind of man who turns everything into a performance. I log the alleged assault as unfounded for now. That doesn't stop him from trying civil stuff. Brace for that. I have a belt, I said. I'll add suspenders. He huffed what might be a laugh. On a related note, Adult Protective Services got a tip about you last night. Anonymous claims said you were confused, at risk, maybe being financially exploited by neighbors. They'll likely stop by this afternoon. It's routine. It's also a waste of their time, in my opinion. But my opinion and the schedule are not married. Should I bake a cake? I asked. Bake documentation, he said. You're good at that. He was right. Paper doesn't always win, but it keeps a man in the game while the noise tries to push him off the field. APS showed up, too. A woman about my son's age, a cardigan with elbow patches like she'd hurtled directly from a social work course to my porch. She knocked gently and waited like she wanted me to decide what happens next. Mr. Collins, she said when I opened the door. I'm Lydia with County Adult Protective Services. We received a call, likely from a well-meaning person, regarding potential self-neglect and possible exploitation. Mind if I come in and chat? I mind, I said. Come in anyway seems to be the theme. She smiled in a way that says she's learned to appreciate gallows humor from people who aren't on the gallows. This won't take long, she said. And every person who has ever told me that has been wrong, but I let her have it. I sat at the table and let her sit opposite. It felt important to me that we face each other like adults and not like an examinee and an examiner. She asked if I knew the date. I did. The season, winter, the address, mine. My primary care doctor retired. I need to pick a new one. My medications. Cholesterol. A vitamin D I always forget. Nothing that makes me forget forgetting. She asked about falls. Stairs? 1998, I said. Ladder. Learned a lot. About finances. I pay my bills. Here's a stack that proves it. About support. Neighbors. Friends. A library that may or may not accept my hands this week. About stress. Yes, I have it. I named it. I wrote it down behind the sugar and in my notebook where I will see it when I shouldn't add more. She asked if anyone had access to my accounts. No, I said. Has anyone tried to convince you to sign anything recently? Only the bakery, and we settled on a muffin instead. She smiled at that. She looked at my pantry when the house rules flashed in the gap, and I didn't close the door because hiding things turns honests into secrets. And I am too old to converse with secrets, I authored. May I? She asked, gesturing to the list. Yes, I said. She read it and nodded. Men don't write this if they're confused, she said. Then because she has to, she added. Some do, but not like this. We can agree to disagree with your training manual, I said. She laughed and then composed herself because she had forms to fill. I'm noting that the house is clean, utilities are on, food is in the fridge, prescriptions are filled. I'll also note you know why I'm here. Because anger makes people creative, I said. And because the police car in my driveway wrote a headline for anyone who needed a plot. She clicked her pen shut. Do you feel safe, Mr. Collins? I feel safer than I did 4 days ago, I said. I changed the lock. Good, she said. She handed me a card. If you need anything, resources, legal clinics, even just a list of the questions you should be asking, call me. Often the thing that unravels a situation isn't the big act, but the little won't do anything moments. You've done a lot of we'll do something once. Thank you, I said. And for once, the phrase felt less like a formality and more like a position in a line I've decided to stand in. After she leaves, I sat for a while and let the fact of that visit work its way into my bones. I don't feel humiliated. I feel observed. And there's a difference. It will sting when someone who wasn't here says welfare check the way a person says poor thing. But I can live with stings. They mean the skin works. At 3, try 0, Maribel called back. Connor, she said. We looked at the logs. The alleged confrontation was a man refusing to pay his lost item fee on a book about how to grill the perfect burger. You said rules are how we treat people fairly. And he left. That was the whole interaction. We still need to do the pause policy, but I wanted you to know the complaint was creative. Everything's creative this week, I said. Denise was quiet long enough for me to count to 5. She is careful with words. She also told me, she says, her voice lowering slightly, that there are valuables of hers still in your house that she needs to retrieve. She asked if I would come over with her to make sure it didn't escalate. She's worried about the tension. She has no valuables in my house, I said, my voice flat. And I don't escalate. I change locks. I told her I'm not getting in the middle, Denise says. I'm in the middle of enough, but I wanted you to know they're attempting the sympathy door again. It's the standard maneuver. I saw, I said. The napkin, the envelope, the 2:00 a.m. attempt. The what? She asked, a genuine surprise in her tone. Nothing, I said. And we both knew it wasn't nothing. But we both understood that sometimes not naming a thing keeps it in a box until you have a real reason to open it. Denise, Yes. Tell Paul I might take him up on that coffee. She exhaled a laugh, a small, tight sound. He'll be insufferable. He'll say he saved a man from his own living room. Let him, I said. After we hang up, I sit a long time with my hands on my knees and count my breaths like a beginner, because that's what I am at this, at choosing firmness over the soft lie. The stew smells done. I turn off the flame and let it sit. Food makes its own decisions once it reaches temperature. So do people. At 9:00, a text buzzes. This time it's from a number I do know. Tom. Ray, you okay? Cal DM'd a few folks. Lot of noise. Ignore it. People like a bonfire and will toss anything on it to see it jump. I'm okay, I text back. It feels strange to write it. It feels true to send it. The cold snap arrives the way cold always does here. Quietly, and then all at once. I leave a drip in the sink and the cabinets under the kitchen pipes cracked open like a pair of mouths airing truth. I take the house rules from the pantry and copy them onto a blank index card and tape that to the inside of the front door where the deadbolt clicks. I go to bed with the weight of a man who did not waver today. This is new enough to feel like a kind of ache and old enough to feel like a memory arriving on time. Before I turn off the light, I write one more thing in the notebook. Love is not a bed. Love is the porch light left on and the deadbolt that works. I sleep, not hard, not soft, enough. In the morning, I will find out just how quickly a story travels when it meets a town that needs one. For now, the house holds its breath with me, and we pass the test that comes after the first. We do not open the door to check if the line is still there. We trust that the line is there because we drew it. A lie is faster than I am. It leaves no footprints and still gets to the porch before I do. By 9:00 the next morning, my coffee is half gone. My house rules are taped inside the pantry. And the stew from last night has set into the kind of square a man can cut with a spoon. The phone rings. I pick up because dread is a habit I'm trying to let starve. Mr. Collins, this is Maribel from Maple Grove. The library? I ask, even though I recognize her voice. Young, brisk, grateful when people put books back the right way. Yes, the library, she says. We had a complaint about an interaction you had with a patron last week. I'm so sorry to ask this, but could you pause your shift today? It'll just be for a few days while we sort the details. What interaction? I ask. My hand finds a pen without looking. An anonymous caller said you were confrontational at the desk over fines. She stops, then tries a softer word. Sharp. I'm sharp with labels, I say. Not people. I believe you, she says quick. We just have to log this right. Procedure. I'll call you back as soon as I can. Of course, I say. There's no point telling a policy its job. I hang up and walk to the sink, because dishes don't lie. I rinse the mug and stare at the swirl in the drain while my mind lines up suspects and then erases the line like a decent man should. The phone rings again before the mug hits the rack. City PD, a man says. Not the older officer from last week and not the young one either. A new voice, tight like a belt. Yes, I say. We received a report alleging you assaulted your son on your front porch yesterday. Shoved him down the steps while he was retrieving personal property. I look at the steps in my mind. New salt, new bulb above them, the envelope in his hand. Mia in the idling car. I did not, I say. Are you at home, sir? I am. We'll be by in 15. 15 minutes is enough time to do any number of foolish things. I choose to do only 2. Put on a clean shirt and put the envelope of motel cash receipt on the table. After that, I sit. Chairs keep men from wandering. 2 officers step onto my porch at the same time. The wind lifts the edge of the doormat like it wants to see if we put anything under it. The older one from before, gray at the temples, eyes that have taken more statements than naps, leads. A second officer I haven't met, keeps his hand near his notepad like it might wobble off his belt if he doesn't. "Morning, Mr. Collins," the older one says. His name tag reads F. Sullivan. He has the kind of voice that would rather not be used unless necessary. "Officer," I say. "Coffee?" "Tempting," he says, "but we'll keep this quick." They stay in the doorway like a pair of rules. Officer Sullivan explains the allegation. Shove, fall, bruised elbow, raised voice, threats. He watches my face the way a carpenter watches a bubble in a level. "I open the storm door," I say. "I handed my son an envelope with enough cash for a motel." I did not shove him. He left on his feet. There were no threats, unless you count the sentence where I said the napkin was clear. "The napkin?" the younger one asks. I point at the storm door. The square of tape is still there, empty now, like a picture frame waiting on a life. "They left a note," I replied. "I have both." Sullivan takes the napkins, reads, raises an eyebrow so slightly, it's mostly a thought in motion. "Do you have any cameras, doorbell, backyard?" "No," I say. "I have eyes and a neighbor. Nora saw him come for the watch yesterday morning. She saw him leave with it." "We're not here for the watch," the younger one says, as if watches bored him. "No," Sullivan says, cutting him a look that says we are here for whatever ends the day with fewer forms. "We're here because when assault is alleged, we have to look. We document." The DA ignores or doesn't. His radio chirps. He puts a palm over it to muffle the dispatch and listens. "Copy," he says to the air. Then to me, "Mind if we step inside?" "I mind," I say. "But come in. There's an art to being a host to men who would rather not be your guests." I wave them toward the table and point at the envelope with the motel receipt. "They took the room," I say. "At least for one night." "May I?" Sullivan asks. And when I nod, he photographs the napkins and the receipt with his phone like he's taking pictures of rare birds he doesn't plan to show anyone. He asks me to tell the story, and I do. Once, without adjectives. The younger officer interrupts twice with the kind of questions you get when a man is still learning where to put his voice. "Any witnesses?" he asks. "Across the street, Nora. She'll tell you I didn't shove a man on my porch." "We'll talk to her," Sullivan says. His gaze has moved from the napkins to my house rules, visible when the pantry door drifts open a hand's width. "What's that?" he asks. "Notes to myself," I say. "I don't open the door any wider. Some things don't help a man in a room like this. Some things help him too much." He nods once and I watch him put me into a category I like. Man with lists. Lists are to officers what gardens are to neighbors. You don't have to see the whole of them to know what kind of person tends to soil. "We'll take a quick statement," Sullivan says. "No charges right now. If your son wants to push this, we'll call you. He tried to file last night, but the desk sergeant explained how thin the ice was. He's angry. Angry is not illegal," I say. "What he does with it might be." They leave with the napkin photos and the motel receipt copied into Sullivan's notebook in block letters that make the facts march. I can feel the neighborhood watching without blinds moving. Police on your steps write their own headline for anyone who needs it. I stand and check the porch rail out of habit. Empty where the watch was. A small rock sits where his letter sat yesterday, like a punctuation mark left behind when the sentence walked off. Sullivan doesn't get 5 houses down before a silver sedan pulls up and stops just beyond my driveway. Paul Carter climbs out, careful on the salt. He has a bag from the bakery and a look on his face that says he'd like to pretend this is purely about muffins. "You okay?" he asks. "I'm annoyed," I say. "That has to do for now." He hands me the bag. Blueberry. They had this other kind with chunks of frosting that looked like the baker changed careers mid-recipe. From across the street, Nora opens her door as if she rehearsed it with Paul. She waves a folded piece of paper in the air. "Saw the patrol car. You want me to write what I saw yesterday about the watch?" "Please," I say. "Use the word retrieved instead of took. Makes it sound less like a heist." "You and your words," she says, and disappears to get her pen moving. Paul glances at the street behind me like he expects to see his wife round the corner with a casserole and a prepared statement. "Denise told me the neighborhood group's already working up its gall," he says. Mia posted at 3:20 in the morning a paragraph about how her elderly father-in-law is having an episode and locking them out, and how they fear for your safety and theirs. Address blurred with one swipe like that's privacy. Comments a mile long. I close my eyes because it helps me visualize a bonfire without feeling the heat. "Do me a favor," I say. "Don't show me." "I won't," he says. "I told Denise not to send screenshots. She wants to weigh in with facts, and I told her the one thing the internet doesn't eat is its vegetables." "Thanks for that," I say. He starts to leave, then turns back. "Ray, I'm going to say something stupid because I don't have a better word. This sucks." "It does," I say. "It's also better than where I was last week." He nods and goes. Nora returns and hands me a half sheet of paper with her square letters marching in a line. On December 27th, at approximately 8:10 a.m., I observed Cal Collins walk directly onto Ray Collins's porch, pick up a wristwatch that had been sitting on the railing since the previous afternoon, and leave in haste. He did not knock. He did not speak to Ray, who was inside. The time on the paper is not exact. She is precise, but not precious. "You're a good neighbor," I say. "I like boring streets," she says. "Whatever keeps ours boring, I'll do." I tuck her statement next to the motel receipt. Boring is the goal I didn't know I missed until this week. At noon, Sullivan's number lights my phone again. "Mr. Collins, we spoke to your neighbor," he says, and something lighter moves in his voice. "Thanks for the napkins. Thanks for the receipt. Thanks for not being the kind of man who turns everything into a performance." I log the alleged assault as unfounded for now. That doesn't stop him from trying civil stuff. Brace for that. "I have a belt," I say. "I'll add suspenders." He huffs what might be a laugh. "On a related note, Adult Protective Services got a tip about you last night. Anonymous claim said you were confused, at risk, maybe being financially exploited by neighbors. They'll likely stop by this afternoon. It's routine. It's also a waste of their time, in my opinion. But my opinion and the schedule are not married." "Should I bake a cake?" I ask. "Bake documentation," he says. "You're good at that." He's right. Paper doesn't always win, but it keeps a man in the game while the noise tries to push him off the field. APS shows up, too. A woman about my son's age. Cardigan with elbow patches like she hurtled directly from a social work course to my porch. She knocks gently and waits like she wants me to decide what happens next. "Mr. Collins," she says when I open. "I'm Lydia with County Adult Protective Services. We received a call, likely from a well-meaning person, regarding potential self-neglect and possible exploitation. Mind if I come in and chat?" "I mind," I say. "Come in anyway" seems to be the theme. She smiles in a way that says she's learned to appreciate gallows humor from people who aren't on the gallows. "This won't take long," she says. And every person who has ever told me that has been wrong. But I let her have it. I sit at the table and let her sit opposite. It feels important to me that we face each other like adults, and not like an examinee and examiner. She asks if I know the date. I do. The season, winter, the address, mine. My primary care doctor retired. I need to pick a new one. My medications, cholesterol, a vitamin D I always forget. Nothing that makes me forget forgetting. She asks about falls, stairs. 1998, ladder, learned a lot. About finances. I pay my bills. Here's a stack that proves it. About support, neighbors, friends, a library that may or may not accept my hands this week. About stress. Yes, I have it. I named it. I wrote it down behind the sugar and in my notebook, where I will see it when I shouldn't add more. She asks if anyone has access to my accounts. No, I say. Has anyone tried to convince you to sign anything recently? Only the bakery, and we settled on a muffin instead. She smiles at that. She looks at my pantry when the house rules flash in the gap, and I don't close the door because hiding things turns honests into secrets. And I am too old to converse with secrets I authored. May I? She asks, gesturing to the list. Yes, I say. She reads it and nods. Men don't write this if they're confused, she says. Then because she has to, she adds, some do, but not like this. We can agree to disagree with your training manual, I say. She laughs and then composes herself because she has forms to fill. I'm noting that the house is clean, utilities are on, food is in the fridge, prescriptions are filled. I'll also note you know why I'm here. Because anger makes people creative, I say. And because the police car in my driveway wrote a headline for anyone who needed a plot. She clicks her pen shut. Do you feel safe, Mr. Collins? I feel safer than I did 4 days ago, I say. I changed the lock. Good, she says. She hands me a card. If you need anything, resources, legal clinics, even just a list of the questions you should be asking, call me. Often the thing that unravels a situation isn't the big act, but the little won't do anything moments. You've done a lot of will do something once. Thank you, I say. And for once, the phrase feels less like a formality and more like a position in a line I've decided to stand in. After she leaves, I sit for a while and let the fact of that visit work its way into my bones. I don't feel humiliated. I feel observed, and there's a difference. It will sting when someone who wasn't here says welfare check the way a person says poor thing. But I can live with stings. They mean the skin works. At 3, Ju 0, Maribel calls back. Ray, she says. We looked at the logs. The alleged confrontation was a man refusing to pay his lost item fee on how to grill the perfect burger. You said rules are how we treat people fairly. And he left. That was the whole interaction. We still need to do the pause policy, but I wanted you to know the complaint was creative. Everything's creative this week, I say. Let me know when paper catches up with reality. I sweep because men who can't shove should sweep, and because it is hard to fret with a broom in hand. The afternoon dwindles to gray. The porch light comes on earlier than usual, and I find I like that. The world feels more honest when it doesn't pretend it has light left. At 5, Zurko, Denise calls. I told myself I wouldn't, and here I am. I need you to know I called Mia, she says. I told her to take the post down or I'd say what I saw. She took it down. Then she put up another one that says we're not naming names and repeats herself with different punctuation. Paul wants to throw his phone in the river. As long as he throws his phone and not his hands, I say. She exhales a laugh, a new sound I'm getting used to. Women laughing because they'd cry otherwise. We're with you, she says. Even if it doesn't look like it on the internet. Where with you looks like a blue heart. I don't need hearts, I say. I need witnesses and muffins. Tell Paul his taste is still trustworthy. Done, she says, and hangs up before we have to admit we're both exhausted from being decent. Evening lays itself down over the street and the house and me like a blanket I didn't know I needed. I heat stew, eat standing, wash the bowl. I am getting good at the kind of hunger that can be satisfied by a ladle and a plan. At 7:10, the phone rings again. The number reads unknown. I let it go to voicemail, then listen in case it's the sort of call that should be on paper. Mr. Collins, this is Officer Sullivan. Quick note, your son attempted to file a theft report on that watch. We did a welfare check at the motel, yes. We can do that when it concerns property tied to a potential crime, and saw the watch on his wrist. Case closed. I also want you to know we logged an attempted burglary at a residence near yours last night, around 2:00. We can't confirm it's related. Lock your doors. You've taken appropriate steps. I sit with that in the quiet and allow myself the smallest smile permitted by law and age. Truth isn't always fast, but it has a way of catching up like a man with better shoes. I take out my notebook and write. Statement of facts. Christmas week. I list dates and times the way an engineer lists measurements. No moral, no adjectives, just wood, nails, and why they hold. I slide it into a folder with Nora's statement, the motel receipt, the APS card, the copy of my property tax bill, a little archive that says I lived here and knew what happened to me when it did. The folder goes into the top drawer where I keep warranties and the last page of my mortgage paperwork that I still pull out sometimes when a day needs a fact stronger than my temper. At 9, a knock. Not the furious rap of a man trying to turn a door into submission. A careful knock. 2 beats. A pause. A third tap. I look through the peephole and see Tom standing on my porch in a jacket a size too thin for a night like this. Evening, he says when I open the solid door and keep the storm closed because that is how we do this now. The storm door doubles us, makes us look like more people than we are. Maybe we need it, Tom, I say. I'm not buying a fantasy football newsletter. He huffs. You won't have to. I quit my league. Too much imaginary pain. He sticks his hands in his pockets and looks at his shoes. I came to say sorry for Christmas Eve. I saw the thing. I knew it was wrong. And I still followed the food like a dog. I invited no one and still played host. Habit, I say. There's more, he says. Cal messaged me last night and asked if I'd swear I saw you push him. I told him no. He said I was choosing my future over his. I told him I was choosing the truth over his. He's mad, but I sleep fine. I thought you should know. I appreciate men who like sleep. I say it's an underused virtue. He looks past me into the house the way a man does when he's trying to remember what a room looked like when he wasn't behaving himself in it. You want me to sit on the porch for 10? He asks. So you don't have to pour an apology into the cold alone. I have a chair by the window, I say. It does fine, but if you want to bring that chair back next time you come, I won't say no. He grins. You're still funny. I'm trying not to be, I say. Every joke is a minnow my son will use to fish for doubt. He nods like he understands more sentences than that one. Night, Ray, he says. Night. Tom. He leaves. I lock. The deadbolt clicks the way it has since this morning, and it makes the kitchen feel like a promise kept. I turn off lights and let the house shrink into the kind of dark that doesn't invite mischief. In bed, I listen to the pipes and the breath my chest makes. And somewhere in there, I hear the neighbor's heat kick on, and I think of all the small private decisions we make that keep our homes warm and our stories straight. Before I sleep, I write one more line under my house rules and stick a copy on the inside of the front door, right above where a hand naturally reaches for the lock. If a lie gets here first, let the truth walk. It has better shoes. It feels like something a man my age would write. And that's good. Tomorrow will work hard to make me doubt it. Tonight it can stand century while the quiet stands next to it. Morning will bring a different kind of knock on a different door, one street over, and I'll see a version of myself in the mirror that appears. But that's tomorrow's test. Tonight belongs to the sound of a house believing me when I tell it again that it's mine. Cold makes everything honest. It tells you which seals actually seal and which stories you've been telling yourself about how warm the house feels when it's mostly memory and wool. By morning, the sky has that washed-out metal tone that announces a test. I go room to room in my socks, hand on the wall, listening for the rattle in the vents that says the furnace is awake and on my side. It answers with a steady hum. Good. I crack each faucet to a thin thread because the paper said the cold snap would squeeze pipes like stubborn truth. I put the kettle on. I add to the notebook. Drip taps, open cabinets under sinks, blankets on standby. I should be at the library, but I'm benched for procedure, which is a word that sounds better than it feels. So, I make my usefulness where I can find it. Across the way, Nora's curtain tilts. A thumb raises in the window. I return it. She knows what that means. Heat's on. Coffee, too. Not asking for anything just now. The kettle sings. I pour and stand by the kitchen window because the street has been more informative than the news lately. A white sedan I don't recognize slows one block over and idles in front of the duplex with the dog that barks like an old man who's lost his hearing and not his opinions. Two people step out, cardigans over official bags with clipboards. They don't hurry. They don't have to. The woman at that duplex opens the door with her coat on, and her jaw set the way people set their jaws when the state has arrived to decide what a house is. I watch a child's hat bob in the hall and the hat's owner step forward to be counted. The boy holds a stuffed bear like an affidavit. The bear looks tired. It's not my business. I drink my tea like a civilized person and tell myself that. Then I put the mug down and get a blanket from the hall closet, just in case the door across the way opens wider and looks around for a neighbor with hands not in his pockets. It doesn't. The visit is short, which is both blessing and worry. The sedan leaves. The dog resumes his editorial. The block exhales. Mirrors are never flattering. First thing in the morning, I see myself in that door waiting while people with binders decide if I'm the thing I say I am. I add a line to the notebook out of superstition. Don't make the state do your parenting for you. At 10, shoe 0. I put on my coat and go to the pharmacy because the refill text lit up last night, before I remembered that phones can be turned over like turtles who need a break. Cholesterol, the unglamorous pill. I like unglamorous. It announces itself without requiring an orchestra. Inside, the heat is turned up to Florida. A line shuffles toward the counter with that grocery store patience this town practices in winter. People look smaller when they're bundled. They move like parcels looking for the right porch. When it's my turn, I give my name, my birthday. The pharmacist looks at the screen and then looks at me. It's a look I recognize from all professions. Someone who's about to recite a policy you'll hate. We have a note on your profile, she says carefully. It says there's an authorized caregiver on file to coordinate pickups and counseling for medications. Since when? I ask. My voice stays where it should. I put both hands on the counter because hands like to be told what to do when the rest of me tilts. Since yesterday afternoon, she says. It flags your account for pharmacist counseling with the caregiver present. What does that mean in English? It means I can't release anything until I speak to both of you. I don't have a caregiver, I say. I have a son who thinks the word will open doors that are not his. She keeps her eyes soft, which is a skill. If it was added without your consent, we can remove it. It will take a call to your prescriber to verify. They're sometimes slow during holidays. Of course they are. People get to be slow. Holidays are where slowness goes on purpose. The system is not a person, though. The system likes to pretend it is. Is the prescription ready? I ask. It is, she says. In the bin. And you can't hand it to me. Not until I make the call. And you can't make the call until after lunch. She smiles with apology that isn't hers to carry. You've done this dance before. Different music, I say. Same clumsy feet. I take a breath. Remove the caregiver when you can. I'll come back tomorrow. If there's a fee for the refill after your clock runs out, I'll pay it. I don't want anyone using the word care as leverage against me. Her shoulders drop a hair. I'll note that, she says. And I'll put your number in the top of the stack. We can call the doctor's exchange if they don't answer. Thank you, I say. I won't write a letter to corporate if this takes until Tuesday. She grins. Please don't. Corporate writes back in templates. I read those at lunch and lose my appetite. On the way out, I pass a display of those chemical hand warmers. I buy a box without thinking because I can see a version of tonight where the furnace takes a personal day, and I would prefer not to discover what my knuckles think about that at 2:00 a.m. Back home, I add a page to the folder. Pharmacy caregiver note added without consent. 12:28. Paper might not stop a fool, but it intimidates their cousins. At noon, the lights blink once, like the house winked, then twice. Then the steady hum that means the day is simple goes thin and disappears. The refrigerator clicks off. The furnace says, "See you when you convince the grid." The house makes that quiet that isn't quiet at all. No machines, no fan, just air. I get the lanterns from the hall closet. I set one on the counter, one on the dining room hutch that still thinks it hosts holidays. I open the curtains and let winter light do what it does best. Be honest. The temperature starts its slow, relentless slide. A text from Nora. You out? I am, I reply. You also. Coffee on a candle in 5. I own a kettle and bad ideas. I type back. Be there. We meet at her kitchen table with 2 candles and a pot of water, pretending it is coffee if we are kind to it. She's in 2 sweaters and a hat that makes her look like a person you trust to decide which bridge to cross in a storm. Power company says 3 hours, she says, showing me her phone like it's a weather vane. 3 hours is the same number they say whether it's 3 or 9, I say. In engineering, we call that a number you say to keep the world from panicking. You're in a mood, she says, smiling. Pharmacy put a leash on my pills, I say. I explain. She doesn't interrupt until the end. That, she says, is a very particular cruelty, or a sloppy attempt at one. I say if he knew what I take, he'd aim elsewhere. But the aim's the point. Do you need anything for today? I need heat, I say. And time. Both are running. We sit with the performative water and let the lamps make our faces look like old photographs. The door knocks, and she glances at me like we're 15 and we broke a rule. It's Paul, cheeks wind-burned, a hat with his high school team logo from a century ago. "Y'all decent?" he asks, like he's delivering a joke the power will enjoy. "As decent as a pot of water on a candle," Nora says. "I've got a little generator," he says. "Enough to keep Denise's mother's oxygen thing going and maybe a line to your fridge for an hour each if we daisy chain and ignore the code inspector we don't have." Nora says, "Save it for the oxygen. My ice cream can become milkshakes." I add, "Ice is at room temperature." Paul nods. "If it gets weird, my basement's warm. Hot water still works. Showers are available to those who keep their opinions to 5 sentences or less." On that last part, we'll fail, Nora says. "Let us," I add. "We're old. We rehearse monologues." He leaves with a wave and a promise to check back. I like men who keep their promises boring. Back at my place, I move the living room into winter formation. Blankets near, rugs straight, a kettle on the stove just to remind the house it knows what steam is. The phone rings. The line stutters like the signal caught a cold. 2. "Mr. Collins, it's the pharmacist." "Bless her." "I'm here," I say. "We reached your prescriber," she says. She confirmed there is no authorized caregiver. The note was removed. I can release the medication when we're back up. For what it's worth, the person who added the note used your son's name. The timestamp matches midday yesterday. That tracks, I say. I keep my voice even because celebrating over the phone is how men fall down in kitchens. "Thank you." "I'm sorry you have to police this," she says. And it is the kind of apology that makes a day feel less pointed. "We'll put an alert on the account that flags any caregiver additions for your sign-off only, in person. I know that's an inconvenience. I prefer inconveniences to the alternative." "So do I say. At 2, the power returns with a shy flicker, then a full-throated hum. The heat clicks and the vents exhale like a choir that knows the second verse. I walk the house, hand on the wall, letting the warmth tap my fingers as it travels. I reset the clocks because I like clocks to admit they lost their place. It keeps them modest. I put stew on and crack the paper. The neighborhood group, because of course, has opinions about the outage and people with generators and who hogged the one working outlet at the coffee shop like it was a lifeboat. Someone mentions a certain house on Maple with cops in the driveway this week. And another says, maybe if folks were nicer to family, they'd find outlets. I close the paper because paper is trying too hard to be a screen. The doorbell chimes at 3. So are 0. I open the solid door, but keep the storm closed out of muscle memory and good sense. It's the woman from the duplex with the dog and the tired bear. Her hat is pulled low. Her hands are empty, which makes them look like they want something and don't know how to ask. "I'm sorry," she says. "You don't know me. I live on Birch. People said you were the one who called about us this morning." "I didn't," I say, "but I saw a car. I was ready with a blanket if the door opened for that." She nods in a way that lets me believe her opinion of me is not a public poll. "They said someone reported noises," she says. "Said they had to check. He was stomping because the heat went out, and the dog hates candles." "Candles are suspicious," I say, "but they light without asking permission." She smiles with half her mouth. "They saw the kids. They saw the fridge and the sink and the table. They left. I'm sorry for the knock," I say. "A house shouldn't have to prove itself." "Neither should a father," she says, and tips her head in the direction of the rumor everyone's been drinking from. "I'm sorry for the way people talk." People talk to feel warm, I say. Sometimes it works. She breathes in like she's saving oxygen for later. If anyone asks you for a statement about what we did or didn't do, tell them we didn't do anything. She looks down at the doormat, then up. And tell them the dog barks at everyone on principle. I'll testify to the dog's principles, I say. She goes. She doesn't give her name. And I don't ask because adding names to this week feels like inviting more actors into a play already too crowded for the set. I add a line to the notebook. Don't feed rumors. They breed. At 4:00, my phone buzzes with a number I know too well. I let it go, then press play on the message because being an adult means you can stand to hear a voice that used to make you reach for your wallet and now makes you reach for paper. Dad, he says. We're at the motel again, but they won't extend without a card. You prevented us from getting your medications, and now I had to use cash for a doctor visit for Mia because she's got a cough and it might be bronchitis. I'm sending you the invoice. We can keep doing this the hard way, or you can act like family. It's efficient the way he strings those. Motel, medicine, doctor, family, a necklace of guilt if you let it sit on your chest. 15 minutes later, an email, a blurry photo of a slip with a total big enough to make a point and small enough to be plausible. The doctor's address is a clinic I recognize for advertising walk-ins with no questions. There's no diagnosis code. The patient line has Mia's name misspelled twice. The invoice timestamp is during the outage. I print it. I write across it in block letters. Attempted leverage via medical expense. No documentation. It goes in the folder with the pharmacy note. The folder is starting to feel like a spine. At 5:00, my porch light clicks on in the early dark. Someone has turned the neighborhood group thread into a chain letter, and one lands in my inbox with a subject line that reads, "We're praying for you, Mr. Soa C." The message itself is a paragraph of concern scotch-taped to a paragraph of scold. I reply with a sentence that can be read as gratitude by the sender and as a boundary by me. Appreciate the good wishes. Facts are quieter, and I'm keeping them. I blind copy no one. I am not building a team. I am maintaining a life. The kettle sings. I lift it, and the street goes black again. The lights give up with less drama this time, as if they've decided there's no point performing surprise twice. The furnace sighs into silence. The house curls into itself, and I understand in my bones why winter is when people move back in with each other, even when they shouldn't. I make my rounds. Faucets to drips, cabinets open, blankets out. I set the camping lantern on the hallway floor and let the ceiling light the path like a cheap planetarium. The back door lock gets a second test. The deadbolt answers with the same polite thunk that tells me it took. A scraping in the alley makes me freeze. Just a shovel against pavement, I tell myself. Then a soft thud under the kitchen window. Not a shovel. I blow the lantern lower and stand against the wall where shadows make friends with men who prefer not to be outlines in someone else's plan. The thud again, then whispering. Two voices, one high with anxiety, one lower with instruction. I lift the phone and type with my thumb because calm hands type better. Non-emergency line. Possible prowlers in alley off Maple near Birch. Power outage. I do not say who I am. The truth is enough. Minutes stretch. The voices disappear. A car door clicks somewhere too near to be coincidence. Tires whisper on snow. I stay where I am until my breath returns to its home. The power returns at 8:00 with less confidence but enough heat. The phone rings at 8:05. It's the older officer. "We got a call about suspicious activity in your alley," he says. That alley is popular tonight. I say, if they were shopping for a window, let them know the catalog is closed. We did a pass, he says. Found footprints that start at the motel and end at an intersection where cars don't stop long enough to be polite. You didn't see faces. I saw a plan that didn't finish, I say. That's plenty. There's a pause, more thoughtful than bureaucratic. You should also know, he says. Someone tried to set up a mail forwarding for your address. The post office flagged it. Holiday. New name. Odd timing. They're holding it at the counter for you to confirm. Of course they are, I say. Someone's shopping for my life one aisle at a time. Paper trail helps, he says. You're building one? After we hang up, I sit with my folder and the lamp and draw a little map. Levers, internet, police, adult services, pharmacy, mail. Seeing the sequence makes it less like a storm and more like weather patterns with a season. Seasons end. Even winter has the decency to admit it's not in charge forever. I tape a new card to the inside of the front door below the rules where my hand reaches for the bolt. When systems get used as weapons, answer with systems. I write what that means under it, because rules like practical advice. Keep receipts. Ask for names and write them down even if you never say them out loud. Confirm in person when possible. Freeze nothing unless you're the one with the freezer. Before sleep, I call Nora to tell her what the officer said about the mail. She listens and then says, "Tomorrow we go together. I'm not letting you stand in that line alone." People listen to men with folders. They listen faster to men with folders and witnesses. Tom offered to carry a chair back. I say, Maybe I'll make him carry the folder instead." "Make him carry muffins," she says. "Folders are yours." The heat kicks on one more time before midnight. The house tucks itself around me. I try to read and don't. I try to worry and do. In the end, I make a list because my brain likes to be told to march. Post office confirm hold. Pharmacy pickup. Bank in-person verify alerts. Porch camera. Do I become the man who owns one? Thank Nora. Thank Paul. Thank the pharmacist with a note that isn't too pleased with itself. Somewhere between the camera question and the gratitude I drift off. The dream I get is not the one I deserve, but the one I've trained for. A house where every door closes with the right sound and opens when it should, and a son who knocks and doesn't try the handle while he waits. Morning will offer me a choice between defense and dignity. I will try for both and likely land somewhere between. In the night, the thermostat clicks. The snow refreezes its opinion of my driveway, and the folder on the table grows heavier in the way paper does when it's asked to be more than itself. Tomorrow, the knock won't be at my door. It will be on my account, and when it comes, it will arrive with paperwork that spells out the last lever he thinks he can pull. Good. I know how to read. I know the grammar of a threat when it arrives on a legal form. The feeling of the cold seeping under the door is less concerning than the chill of the predictable maneuver. I had accounted for him being angry. I had accounted for him being poor. I had, in my years, even accounted for him being manipulative. But I had failed to account for him leveraging the systems built to protect the truly helpless. That realization, in the small hours before dawn, was what finally pushed me from fretfulness to absolute clarity. If he wants to use the system, I will use the system better. I will use the system with an engineer's precision, a librarian's meticulousness, and an old man's patience. The final plan takes shape, clean and angular, in the quiet dark. I will move with purpose. I will speak only to paper. I will not engage the emotion that he craves. He wants a breakdown. He will get a balance sheet. The morning starts with errands and ends with a choice. The choice is not about love. It's about locks. I dress like a man who expects to explain himself to strangers. Clean shirt, the belt my wife bought me, the folder that has become my spine. It's the kind of cold that makes paper feel like metal. Good. Facts should have weight. First stop, the post office. Nora comes because she said she would, and because when your name is the one on the line, a second pair of eyes is the opposite of drama. The lobby smells like tape and defeat. A handwritten sign says, "Passport services suspended. System down." The line samples all the ways impatience takes human form. Toe tapping, throat clearing, sighs arranged in ascending keys. When it's my turn, the clerk leans forward like she's been warned I might arrive. "Hold on a forwarding order for your address," she says before I even finish my name. We flagged it. Wanted to verify. "It wasn't me," I say, "and it wasn't authorized." She nods, retrieves a form, and places it between us like a mediator. "Sign here to cancel. There's a copy of the attempted order if you want it." I do. The sheet lists my address and a name that is not mine. The forwarding destination is a P.O. box on the other side of town. The handwriting looks like a man trying to become legitimate by leaning harder on the pen. Nora reads over my shoulder and whistles. "They always think the post office is where identity lives," she murmurs. They forget we talk." I sign. The clerk stamps my copy with a red mark that looks like a small sanctioned stop sign. "We'll add a note," she says. "In-person verification only for changes." "Thank you," I say, and I mean it the way a man means it when bureaucracy remembers him as a person. The air feels lighter outside. One leak plugged. Nora pulls her coat tighter. "That's how they start," she says. "A change of address, a redirection of life. It makes you disposable." "Not this life," I say. "This life has too many witnesses." Second stop, the bank. They know me from the mortgage years, from the stack of lollipops my grandkids took without asking on Saturdays when the world said yes because that's what Saturdays are for. The manager shakes my hand and then shakes Nora's because a woman with a notebook and no fear in her posture tends to be the person the room should have greeted first. "I need to lock things down," I say. "Alerts in person only on anything that moves a dollar or a digit." "We can do that," she says, clicking through menus until my name blooms on a screen with those lying little graphs that pretend a life is a smooth arc. "We can require IDs in person for account changes. Add a no P.O. box note and set text alerts to you and a backup number if you want. To use the library landline," I say. "If I disappear, I'll be buried between biography and true crime." She smiles. "We can put a note that says customer prefers paper. The system will not understand, but the people will." The relief that washes over me is visceral. It's the relief of knowing the fortress has been reinforced with concrete, not just good intentions. The money is safe. The mail is safe. The identity is safe. On the way out, Nora squeezes my elbow. "Good," she says. "We've tightened the three things that make a life leak. Mail, money, medicine. Add men," I say. And she laughs in that short, grateful way that says we're still allowed to make jokes as long as they carry their own proof. Home feels steadier after those stops. I make a sandwich and eat standing. The tuna is cold and simple. The silence of the house is not empty. It is waiting. The phone rings at 1:00, and a voice that's trying to be important introduces itself as a process server. "Mr. Collins, I have documents to deliver. Are you available?" "I am," I say. "What is it?" Petition for temporary guardianship, he says, crisp as ice snapping in a glass. The line goes quiet except for my breath and the faint sound of him flipping pages to make sure the next words exist. They do. They always do when fear wants to earn its keep. What's the basis? I ask. Engineers never stopped being engineers. We want the scaffolding even when it's rotten. Allegations of confusion, self-neglect, risk of harm. He says, he does not sound convinced. He sounds like a man reading a script he doesn't want to memorize. There's a hearing scheduled for Monday morning. It's Saturday. I look at my folder. I look at the clock. I look at the door that still believes me when I lock it. I'm home, I say. You can leave it on the porch if you'd rather not hear me read the adjectives. He arrives 20 minutes later. He's young. He has the posture of someone who knows better than to make eye contact during explosions. I sign what I have to sign to prove I received what I have to receive. The packet is thin, always a tell. Lies like to file early and light. When he leaves, I read. The petition is Cal's hand on a keyboard he doesn't deserve. It lists the police visit without mentioning the unfounded box Sullivan checked. It mentions the APS check without mentioning Lydia's house is clean. Bills are paid note. It says, I withheld necessary medication, which I suppose is one way to describe a pharmacist refusing to let theft use the word caregiver. Breathe, I say to the empty kitchen. The house breathes back. The low rush of heat through a vent, the tick of pipes adjusting to the temperature they prefer, not the one the cold demands. I call Sullivan. I received a guardianship petition. I say, Monday. He exhales. Of course you did. I'll email you the incident numbers and a short statement you can bring. APS can provide documentation if you call Lydia. The judge will decide on paper and posture. Bring both. Thank you, I say. And Mr. Collins? Yes. Don't talk to him until the hearing. If he shows up, call us. I know that sounds like a bumper sticker. It's the right one this weekend. I call Lydia. She answers like she was waiting. I can fax a letter to the court Monday morning and email you a copy now, she says. I'll include the line you liked about the house and the bills. I'd include the line about how I know the date, I say. Judges love a calendar. I write a list labeled Monday, and then I put the folder on the table and walk away from it. Because part of being old is knowing when to let paper sit in the open like a guardian dog. If anyone tries to argue with it, they'll have to see their reflection in the plastic sleeve. The afternoon slinks toward evening with that winter gait I used to love when the kids were small, and we could call it cozy. It isn't cozy now. It's a test. I fail the part where I pretend I'm not counting the steps between the street and my porch. At dusk, Nora appears with a pie tin covered in foil. It's not pie, she says. It's lasagna. The pan is pretending because I ran out. I lift a corner. Cheese enough to make a sermon. Bless you, I say. She sees the petition on the table through the door glass and raises an eyebrow that could slice a weaker man. Ah, she says. He filed the nuclear option. Temporary guardianship hearing, I say. You have your specimens ready, she says, nodding at the folder. I'll come Monday. I can't speak in court unless asked, but I can sit there and make the room behave. You do that, I say. At 8:00, the neighborhood thread produces a new trick. A screenshot of the court docket with my surname blurred like blurring hides the obvious. A caption, Pray for the vulnerable. Denise forwards it with a single line. I told her to take it down. She will not. I will put my phone in a drawer now. Good, I text back. Phones behave poorly in drawers. It'll learn. At 9, 1 Sudoyam. I do my rounds. Doors, locks, the porch light a little brighter than I like. I sit in the window chair and try to read. The sentences hold like a bridge under a weight it wasn't designed to carry. I mark my place and let the house do the talking. It says things in clicks and sighs I can translate after all these years. A car's headlights wash across the ceiling just after 11. Ciao zero. Slow off. A door opens. 2. I stand and cross to the kitchen without letting the lamp announce it. Shadows move across the back fence like actors missing their cues. The scrape comes. Metal against the latch on the basement bulkhead. I make the call with my thumb. Non-emergency number on speed dial now. I keep my voice low. Maple near Birch, I say. Back entrance. 2 figures scrape at the latch. Stay inside, the dispatcher says. So units en route. The scrape stops. A whisper, a new sound, the soft pop of a cheap crowbar slipping between wood and door. The bulkhead door is old. It's also stubborn. The sound becomes a complaint. The complaint becomes a thud. I go to the top of the basement stairs and turn on the light. The beam spills down the steps, trains on the door below, makes my shadow tall on the concrete like a man telling a story about himself. The thud stops. I speak the way my father spoke when he was too tired to repeat himself. This house is occupied. The police are on their way. Leave. Footsteps. A whisper that lifts my hair because I know the voice. The younger one. Mine. He's bluffing, Cal says. Cal, I say, and the basement holds the syllable like a chapel holds an echo. Leave now. Another voice. Mia's, tense and thin. This is stupid, she hisses. He'll win this part. We need the paper, not the door. Sirens soft at first, then closer. The footsteps retreat. The fence creaks. The backyard empties itself of plans. Lights paint my kitchen walls blue and red. 2 cars. The knock is polite, then professional. I open the solid door. Keep the storm between us because that is the liturgy now. Officers, I say. Mr. Collins, Sullivan says. He's here, which means someone told the schedule to be kind. You all right? I am, I say. They tried the bulkhead. They left when they heard the stove-top light is broken. I let the small joke stand there to remind all of us the house still belongs to someone with a mouth. A flashlight scan reveals pry marks on the wood. Paint curls like fingernails. Footprints in the frost leading to and from the alley. Sullivan shines the beam at the fence line. Unit on Birch saw a sedan pull away quick, he says. We'll match plates if we get lucky. We stand in the yard while the younger officer radios what officers radio, when they know a report won't earn anyone a medal and may still change someone's winter. Sullivan asks if I want to press charges, if and when. I take a long breath and taste the kind of decision that doesn't make you a better person, but does keep you an honest one. Yes, I say, for trespass and attempted burglary, and I want a formal trespass notice filed tonight. Served if you can. Sullivan nods once. Men appreciate clear verbs. You'll have a case number before we leave, he says. We can serve a no trespass by mail and in person if contact is made. If he returns, it's arrest. I'm saying this for the tape as much as for you. Say it for the house, I say. It's the one that needs to hear. They take photos, measure a boot print. The night keeps its chill like a principle. Sullivan steps onto the porch to write and pauses at my folder, visible through the glass. Bring that Monday, he says. I plan to. He tilts his head toward the dark street. He'll get himself arrested before a judge can decide anything if he keeps this up, he says. Some men think momentum is a plan. I used to, I say. And then I learned paper is a better engine. When they're gone, the yard looks smaller and safer and all the same size it was yesterday. I close the bulkhead with the kind of care you give a friend who's had a scare. Gently, firmly, with a new lock waiting on the workbench for morning. I stand in the kitchen and write with a pen that doesn't mind cold. 11:07 p.m. Attempted entry at bulkhead. Voices. Cal plus Mia. Called dispatch. Officer Sullivan plus Reed responded. Photographs taken. Trespass order requested. I tape the note over the deadbolt card like a man hanging a certificate on a wall no one else will read. At midnight, my phone vibrates with a text. Unknown number. The message is short and so angry it forgot to punctuate. You think the cops make you write? You think paper makes you write? Wait till Monday. I reply with nothing. Silence is not surrender. It's conservation. I sleep in bursts. In one of them, I'm young and weightless. In another, I'm my father's age and heavier. I wake to the thinnest thread of pink on the kitchen wall and the smell of a house that didn't freeze or burn while I dared it to be itself. At 8:00, a knock, measured, adult. I open to find Cal on the porch alone, hands out from the coat like he's prepared to be searched. He looks older than he did last week and younger than he tells himself when he stares into a bar's mirror. Don't call them, he says quickly. Please, I won't step off the mat. Can we talk 5 minutes? Like the napkin said that other time? No, I say, and leave it there long enough for the word to grow roots. But I will say one thing. He waits. Waiting is not a skill he enjoys. You filed for guardianship, I say. His chin lifts. Because you're not safe alone. I am safer alone than I was with you, I say. Monday, I will walk into a room with people who do not care about my feelings. I will hand them paper that doesn't care either. They will decide using words that have numbers behind them. You can bring whatever adjectives you've rented for the day. They won't balance my receipts. He swallows. You're really going to do this to me? I'm going to do this for me, I say. And for the house. He shifts his weight like he might try the handle on instinct. He doesn't. Good. Learning is possible after all. You called the cops on your son, he says, making the sentence as big as he can. My son came at 2:00 a.m. with a crowbar, I say. Words are smaller when you include times. He flinches. I watched the flinch travel through him like a fault line that just learned its name. He lowers his voice. I was scared, he says. I still am. It's cold. We're out of options. You're out of the option that uses me, I say. The world remains full of others. You have a watch you can sell, friends you can ask, a wife who, if she wants to be your wife, can accompany you to whatever office believes you when I don't. He stares at me. A dozen faces cross his own. The baby, the boy with the skinned knee, the teenager with the car keys, the man I helped move apartments because he chose a third-floor walk-up like gravity was an idea he could outvote. Then the present wins. You'll regret this, he says. Not a threat, a prayer. I've regretted the last 8 months, I say. I'd like to try the opposite. He steps back. He looks at the porch light. He looks at the door, the place where the deadbolt carries its quiet authority. He stuffs his hands in his pockets, and the boy appears again for a heartbeat, then recedes. Monday, he says. Monday. I agree. He goes down the steps without slipping. The car he gets into is not the sedan I saw last night. Good. At least that plan changed. At 10:00, the officer returns. Hat in his hand, papers in the other. Trespass notice prepared. Sullivan says, "We served it to him at the motel this morning after a domestic disturbance in the parking lot that turned out to be two people arguing about a vending machine." He signed, "He understands the next visit gets him a ride." "Thank you," I say. "You have my gratitude and my property taxes." He grins at that and hands me the copy. It goes in the folder. The folder goes on the table. The table holds. The rest of the day, I keep my hands busy because my mind is a dog that chases trouble when it's bored. I install the new lock on the bulkhead. Oily metal smell in my nose like a workshop in July. I write a note to Marble at the library. Pause away. Turns out my life needed shelving at home. I bring Nora's pan back with a thank you that's not too fancy to be believed. I check on Denise's mother through Paul and accept the offer of Tuesday coffee with graceless relief. At dusk, Tom arrives with the chair he took on Christmas Eve. He sets it down in my living room and runs a hand over the arm like he's petting a quiet animal. "Fits better here," he says. "It does," I say. "You good for Monday?" he asks. "I have paper," I say, "and a tie that doesn't make me itch." He nods. "I'll sit in the back and make faces only you can see." "Please don't," I say. "I'll laugh and the judge will think I'm unserious." He grins. "You are the most serious man I know." "I'm trying to be," I say. For once, when the house settles and the street slows to its Sunday night pace, I lay out my clothes the way I did when I used to get up at 4. Delerto to pour concrete before the day got ideas. I put the folder by the door. I tape one more card above the lock. For me, not for him. If it comes to the door with paper, answer with paper. If it comes with a crowbar, answer with the phone. If it comes with a son's face, answer with the truth, even if your voice is tired. I sleep, not deeply. Enough. In the small hours, the heater clicks on. Does its old faithful work. And inside that sound, I hear what I've been trying to say since the night I set a deadline at my own table. I am the person who keeps this house warm. I choose it. I choose me. In the morning, I will choose the courthouse. I will carry my folder like a lantern. And whether I win or merely hold the line for another week, the door will still be mine to lock that night. That is the victory I can name without flinching. Some men call that pride. I call it temperature. Courthouses hum like refrigerators. They keep things from spoiling. They don't care if you like what they preserve. I put on the tie that doesn't itch, carry the folder that has been my spine, and sit on a bench that's seen every kind of posture a person can bring to judgment. Nora is beside me with her small notebook, the kind that makes people sit up straighter even when she doesn't open it. Tom sits behind us a row back like a man pretending he isn't part of the story. Paul texts me that he's in the cafe if I need a fresh shirt after this, because some jokes survive winter. My name is called. The room is smaller than TV promised and larger than my living room. The judge wears glasses on a chain and an expression that says she's seen enough holidays weaponized to write a pamphlet. "Petitioner," she says. Cal stands. He looks like a man who dressed fast and rehearsed slow. "Your Honor, my father is confused, vulnerable, and..." She lifts a hand. "We'll test that with facts, not adjectives. To me, Mr. Collins. Raymond," I say. "I know my address, the date, the year, what I pay each month, and why I'm here." "Good," she says. "Let's make this efficient." Cal reads from a paper as if volume can give it weight. He mentions the police. He mentions adult protective services. He mentions withheld medication and erratic decisions. He mentions neighbors influencing me. He doesn't mention the attempted break-in or the trespass order. He doesn't mention the motel receipt. He doesn't mention the watch because liars develop sudden shyness around nouns they can't control. The judge turns to me. Mr. Collins. I slide the folder forward. Paper says good morning in its own voice. Exhibit A, I say. Property tax paid. Heat and electric current. Bank alerts set. Pharmacy letter removing unauthorized caregiver and requiring my in-person consent. Post office cancellation of attempted mail forward. Police incident numbers. Alleged assault unfounded. Trespass order served after attempted entry at my bulkhead. Adult Protective Services letter. House clean. Utilities on. Food in fridge. Patient-oriented ×3. I am tired, Your Honor, but not incapacitated. Officer Sullivan testifies without flourish. Dates, times, what he saw, what he didn't. Lydia's note comes in through the clerk. Official letterhead doing its quiet work. Nora doesn't need to speak. The judge reads her porch statement and nods at its tidy lines like she appreciates prose that doesn't try to impress her. Mr. Collins, the judge says, do you consent to guardianship? I do not, I say. I consent to boundaries. Petitioner, she says to my son, do you have medical documentation of incompetence? A diagnosis? A physician's affidavit? No, he says. The word looks strange in his mouth. Evidence of financial exploitation? He gestures at the room like he expects it to make his point for him. He's being influenced. By whom? The judge asks. The laws of property, the thermostat, the concept of receipts. She has a dry streak. I like her for it, despite myself. She leans back, hands steepled. Temporary guardianship is an extraordinary remedy. It requires clear evidence that a person cannot meet their basic needs or manage their affairs. What I have is evidence of the opposite, and evidence that you, Mr. Collins the Younger, have attempted to use systems to gain leverage after a family dispute that ends today. Petition denied. The words land like sandbags where a flimsy story was floating. You can feel a room's gravity change. She isn't finished. Additionally, she says, I am issuing no orders today because the criminal trespass process is already in motion, and I won't duplicate what the law has on rails. But hear me, courts are not tools for resentment. If there's another baseless filing, we will discuss costs. If there's another late-night visit, you won't see a probate judge. You'll see a magistrate from the back of a patrol car. Do you understand? Cal nods. It's the first honest motion he's made all morning. Mr. Collins, she says to me, softer. You have neighbors who show up, an officer willing to write clean reports, and a habit of writing things down. Keep all three. You're dismissed. Outside, the hallway feels warmer than it is. Paper in my hand weighs less. The way groceries weigh less when you know you can afford them. Cal is waiting by the elevators with Mia behind him, her eyes somewhere else. He looks at me like a man who expected a different script. You didn't have to, he starts. I did, I say. I didn't enjoy it. Mia looks at the floor tiles like they can tell her how to feel. We got a room, she says. For this week. Good, I say. Make it count. Nora touches my sleeve, and I remember how to stand in success without apologizing for it. Tom does me the kindness of saying nothing until we're outside where air is too cold to carry anything heavy. You handled that like a levee, he says. I brought sandbags, I say. Everyone else brought weather. We go to the diner because victory, like grief, eats better when something is buttered. Paul and Denise meet us. They ask for no details and offer jokes the judge would have enjoyed. We talk about football we won't watch. We talk about the library and the rumor that they're buying new chairs. We talk about the cold. We talk about everything except the thing that brought us here, which is its own kind of respect. After lunch, I walk into the library with my folder under my arm and the relief of a man returning to a job after a doctor said he could. Marble looks up, grins, and points at a cart of books that has become a small city. "You're cleared," she says. Paper caught up with reality. "Good," I say, and take a corner of the city and start returning it to where it belongs. A kid pushes a truck along the low shelf in picture books. His mother mouths, "Sorry." I shake my head. Trucks are the sound of a future that still thinks roads are always open. Life settles into routines that look ordinary and feel earned. Pharmacy smooth. Mail intact. Bank hushed. The porch light becomes a statement, not a plea. I add 2 screws to the bulkhead latch, because hardware likes to be complemented with more hardware. I oil the hinges that squeak complaints during the cold snap. Complaints deserve answers, too. The neighborhood calms the way neighborhoods do. Our thread moves on to arguing about snowplow routes and whether the coffee shop's muffins are smaller than last year. Nora and I buy one, split it, decide we're older, not the muffins. I take the tree down to the basement with care and pack the angel my wife painted into her tissue paper nest. I touch her face with a fingertip the way you touch a memory you believe will remain, even if you don't fuss over it. At the pantry, the house rules have curled a little at the corners. I copy them onto an index card in a hand that has steadied this month. I add one more. When peace arrives, protect it. Don't audition chaos because the room is quiet. Days pass. The street keeps its old promises. Sunday papers on porches. Monday trash cans at the curb. The same dog on birch scolding weather. The folder lives in the drawer now, not on the table. It is heavy enough to calm me and light enough to ignore. On Friday, a letter arrives with my name in careful handwriting and a stamp that means someone stood in line to send it instead of shoving it in my mail. I carry it to the table and sit. There are a dozen ways this could be awful. 10 years ago, I would have opened it standing. Today, I give the words the ceremony they asked for when they bought the stamp. Dad, it begins. I feel the word like a question the letter is trying to ask. Monday didn't go how I wanted. I'm angry at you, and more at myself. We found a weekly rental. I sold the watch. I'm applying at 2 warehouses and a grocery distribution place. I started a program at the clinic. It's not rehab, exactly. It's classes. They say they'll help me stop using other people's lives as a plan. I know I can't come back. I'm not asking. I do want to see you if you're willing. Coffee in public. Your rules. No arguments, no money, no remember when you used to. I don't have a number worth writing down yet. The office Wi-Fi is silly. Maple. Net. Community. I'll check there Tuesday at 10. Bruzero for your reply. Mia says to say she's sorry for yelling at your staircase. I'm not there yet, but I'll try. Cal. It's almost an apology. It's not one. It's something between a report and a proposal. It's also the most adult letter he's written since 3rd grade. I put it next to the folder and do something I haven't done in years. I pull out stationery. Not a notepad. Paper. The good kind my wife would use when she wanted a letter to feel like a structure, not a text. Cal, I write. Coffee? Yes. Public? Yes. Wednesday 10. 0. Maple Diner. I will buy the coffee. I will not buy anything else. Bring a notebook, not your phone. We will make a list of what you will do between Wednesday and the following Wednesday. No money will change hands. If you break the plan, we pause for 30 days before we meet again. If you insult me, we end that meeting and start counting from 0. If you use the police, the court, the pharmacy, the mail, or any neighbor as leverage, we stop. If you want help finding a budget or a union hall, I can point. If you want a bed, I will hand you a list of shelters. I love you. That doesn't change my luck. Dad. I walk to the post office. The clerk who helped me with the forwarding scam smiles when she sees the envelope. That one going out? She asks. Out? I say. Good, she says, stamping with a little more ceremony than is strictly required. Wednesday at 10. Zero. I sit in the diner with the folder under the chair and nothing on the table but 2 coffees, a pen, and a cheap spiral notebook I bought like a man buying bandages. Cal arrives on time. He sits like a student on the first day. His eyes do the thing my eyes do when words need facts to lean on. We're not hugging, he says. No, I say. We're not. We make columns. Must pay. Must earn. Must ask. The list looks like a small animal that might survive if it finds water. He writes phone under must pay, and I make him cross it out and put rent. Then write phone under must ask with a little box that reads only if job offers call. I draw lines between warehouse and Boots and Union Hall. I write down the number of a legal clinic that holds free sessions on consumer debt. He doesn't ask for money. I don't offer it. I buy both coffees because that's what you do when you invite someone to a table. After an hour, we stop because grown men should end meetings before they ruin them. He looks at the notebook like he can't decide whether it's an instrument or an indictment. This isn't much, he says. It's more than how we did December, I say. He nods. He taps the pen against the paper. I'm going to mess this up, he says, eyes on the table. I expect that, I say. I also expect you to start again without using my lock. He looks up at that. Some mix of hurt and relief that a person can feel when the rules are the same as last week's. Okay, he says. We leave the diner. We don't walk in the same direction. It feels less like an ending than I feared, and less like a beginning than he wants. Good. We're not writing a movie. We're not even writing a book. We're outlining a week. Back home, the house accepts me without ceremony. Because ceremony is for days when we need to believe we are different than yesterday. I oil the porch hinge. I bring in the mail. I set the spare key on the counter and think about it for a long time. Then I walk across the street to Nora's and knock. She opens with her apron on and the smell of onions deciding to become something. Yes, she says, mock suspicious. Emergency key, I say, holding it up. For pipes, paramedics, or pies that need retrieval before they burn. She hesitates. You sure? Yes, I say, and add what makes it work for me. Write your name on it. Keep it in a box that says Ray so it doesn't become anyone else's good idea. Done, she says, and takes it like you accept a responsibility and not a gift. Coffee in the morning? Yes, I say. And I'm bringing the bad muffins so we have something to complain about. The library reinstates my Tuesday afternoon shift like nothing ever happened. The girl at the desk has a new haircut and a way of saying, Hi, Mr. Collins. That tells me the rumor cycle has moved on without taking me with it. A boy returns a book with a bent cover and half an apology. I tell him he's not the first man to bruise a spine and live. The porch light clicks on at dusk the way it always has. The deadbolt clicks behind it. Both are part of the same sentence. I stand at the window chair and watch a couple push a stroller past. The wheels carving a neat path through old snow. The dog on Birch announces that even in peace a neighborhood has opinions. At the pantry, the house rules have curled a little at the corners, but they hold the wall. I look at the last line. Love is not a bed. Love is the porch light left on and the deadbolt that works. It feels complete. The house is warm. The paper is filed. The quiet is earned. The story of what happened here is no longer a crisis. It is a document. And that is the only ending a man like me ever needed. I sit in the kitchen, the lamp throwing a low, steady light, and for the first time in months, I don't feel the need to write anything down. I just listen to the sound of the house believing me. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.